As the leader of the Booner Pack, I lead from the front.
All right, boys. Lock in.
It's our core foundation, man. Grit.
I'm fired up. I'm fired the fuck up, boys.
It's pumping right now. It's got my juices pumping, boys.
Welcome, everybody, to Crunch Time with Jeff, Booner, Lukas, and Gentry. It is Monday, September 9th, and it is Victory Monday. Victory Monday. We got a lot to get to. It's good to talk about a win, break it all down today, figure out what happened over the weekend. Fellas, I can get used to, 16 more of these? We just go 17, though. I like this feeling. It's a good feeling.
19 of them, baby, with the Super Bowl. Straight through the playoffs, baby.
That's fair.
Great Monday, fellas. Great Monday. Got to send Kelly Stafford back home with an L. Send him back to L.A. Matthew Stafford, very fine quarterback, had a very fine performance. But yet again, just wasn't enough to get it done in Ford Field. Too tough of an environment. Fans were making an effect, and now we get to celebrate on Monday, fellas. Great Monday.
Let's go, baby.
A lot of stuff to get to. We'll talk about offense, defense. Again, even Jamo we'll get into today as well. Booner's going to give out some Kool-Aid. I cannot wait for this. The debut Kool-Aid pictures of the game. Give out to some players. We have graphics we're going to get to. We'll have our winners and losers of the game as well. But again, players spoke today. We'll get to that. But Dan Campbell, he had his post-game speech, his post-game victory speech. Speaking of things that I absolutely love watching and love enjoying, is these. Dan Campbell giving out a post-game victory speech. Let's listen to this real quick. I'll play it for the people in case you haven't, or if you haven't seen it. If you have, we'll see it again because it's absolutely beautiful. But here's Dan Campbell. Let's listen to him.
The team gave us everything they had, man. They did. They threw it at us, man, and give them some credit. They did, man. They laid it on the line all the way. But the bottom line is, man, it's hard to break us now. It's hard to break us. As a matter of fact, you ain't going to do it. And we just had to buy our time, find our rhythm. Defense, we held. Fox, what an outstanding freaking punt to help our defense. And offense, we do what we got to do to get in overtime. And then we win the toss. Golf, nice job. We go all the way down. That's a damn good win. That's number one. We're 1-0 right now. I got 2 game balls. First one is this, man. You talk about closing out the game. And I said it the other day. Somebody asked me, I said, man, you can start the game with this guy and you can finish it with him. And anything in between on offense, Dave Montgomery.
Look. So we was in that fight for a while, man. It was ugly for a little minute. Before the game, Ben said, it's showing up ain't going to be our best game. It ain't going to be the perfect game, but we finished it together as a team.
Defense, man. This guy was all over the freaking field, man. Play after play after play. In the pass game, the run game, Alex Anzalone.
Hey, this is just one win. I look at it every year. I just look at it a quarter at a time, 4 games at a time. Let's go 3-1, 4-0 each quarter. It's a long-ass season. This is just one. Keep it going.
Damn good win, gentlemen. That's the good news when you don't play your best ball and you still find a way to win, because we'll clean the rest of this up, right? And we'll be better. I don't care whether we won or lost this game. I was going to tell you the same thing. We got to get better every week. Just a little bit better next week, and we'll be good. All right? Great win, man. Great win because it's winning the NFL. Break it down.
Hey, a win's a win in this league. They're hard to come by, especially against the good teams. Let's go. Lions on 3. 1, 2, 3. Lions.
I mean, vibes are high. You got Anzo, and we'll get to Anzo. I know Klotz definitely is looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm.
It's even more impressive. The NFL is hard to win anyway. All right, and it's hard to win when you're not playing your best football, and the opposing team is playing better than you. You have to find a way, and especially if they're an inferior team, and they did that. And that's such a great thing. It's a great thing. We could talk about, the Lions offense didn't do this. No, they won not playing their best ball. They deserve more credit for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you simply look at just like the Cincinnati Bengals and New England Patriots yesterday. Like that could have very well been the case. Like the Detroit Lions, when they get in these games, I think everybody had confidence too, especially in primetime games, being able to beat a team like the LA Rams, who are in a division with the NFC West, in a division with the San Francisco 49ers, who are about to play in primetime with no Christian McCaffrey against a very good defense and Aaron Rodgers. So getting a win over a team like the LA Rams, who are going to be in a division with the 49ers, who you got to play later on, all of these NFC matchups you could possibly get early on, especially, the Rams are weak right now, but the Rams are going to be in the playoffs. People are talking about this could possibly be a matchup you see in the NFC Championship game. So getting this win week 1 when you're about to play another potential playoff team in the NFC and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Detroit Lions needed this win, and they got it. Just might have been not in the fashion that some people like myself thought it was. But at the end of the day, a W is a W.
Yeah, I mean, all it comes down to, at least for me, being in the NFL, like who was it yesterday? The Patriots, was it the Patriots that get the win yesterday? Like there's teams who are going to be 10-point underdogs and get wins somehow, some way. Like the last year, the Cardinals versus I think it was the Chiefs or the 49ers. Like there's going to be big time wins and upsets. If you find a way to just come out with a W in the NFL, I don't like this is like Klotz, you said, like a playoff team. Like you just got an absolute grinded out win versus a playoff team, and you probably played the worst football you'll play over the next 17 weeks. They will not play that bad ever again this season. Most likely. Like this game last night was how they played the Ravens, it felt like last week or last season, when it was like nothing was going right. The offense was stalling out, the defense was giving up every single possession. That was the Ravens game last year. Like that was other games last year that they went and got blown out in. And to last night, instead of getting blown out or losing, they were down a possession, and they said, all right, we need to figure this out, boys. We need to come out and win this football game. And they came back out, flipped it around, and won the game. Like that 2 years ago, Dan Campbell, his first 2 years as the head coach, those are all losses, and those are all losses by multiple scores, like when you're playing that bad. And the fact now, Dan Campbell, and all kudos to him, and we're going to talk about Dan, at least I'm going to talk about Dan Campbell a lot today. Dan Campbell deserves so much credit for holding this team together and pulling these guys back in the fourth quarter and overtime and being like, hey, this is what it's about. And he's been able to build so many different vets in the culture. If there was no culture on this football team, that game would have been over in the second quarter. Not the second quarter because it was 6-0 or 3-0 or whatever, but it would have been over quick, and there would have been no game in the fourth quarter to even have overtime. So, like, that the whole culture of this, like, I'll talk about it later. This is the best team in football. And I know it's crazy to say because they just won in overtime and they almost lost to the Rams, a beat-up Rams. Any other team in football loses that football game to the Rams down the stretch. Any other team. The Lions were able to figure that out with the offensive line and get things going. Kudos to Dan Campbell at the end of the day with that one, to be able to say, hey, like, we need to get these guys together. And then the post-game being like, all right, fellas, let's be realistic now. We were bad. Like, we looked bad. We need to go figure this thing out. We're lucky to come out with that win. So I love what I saw.
Yeah, well, a player that was big time for them. One of many players, David Montgomery. He spoke to the media. Here's his thoughts on his overtime performance.
It felt good. Yeah, it was a good play, fun play.
Once you got rolling in overtime, did you think there was any way they were going to stop you?
Oh nah, nothing against them. I was in the mode though. I was already locked in at that point where, feel like I had to prove myself to myself. I feel like that was the greatest opportunity for it to happen, for me to showcase, what I'm capable of, but at the same time showing how much grit that offense and this team has. So, being able to go out and close it out, like I said, my O-line, like, come on now, like, best O-line in the league, and you got them boys outside of me blocking them whether they block, and like I said, you got JG facilitating everything. So, like I said, I'm just excited we got the win.
Yeah, I mean, he's excited. We're excited that you, Dave Montgomery, was a big reason why they won that football game. Even though, running the football, they took, it seemed like Montgomery, they went away from him and then they went back to him, and you just saw, oh yeah, this is why they should have stayed with him the entire game. I mean, fourth quarter and overtime, they were on a mission. And I said this earlier today as well, guys. It just felt the way they won in overtime, to just pound the football and be as physical as they were, to go out on like that and win a game like that when they needed to. That's like the epitome of Dan Campbell football. Like, they closed it out exactly like what their identity is, which is, we're going to pound the football. We're going to be more physical than you. And we're going to bite your kneecaps, which, Dan says that. And you know how it is. Guys running the football, these guys are grown men, and this offensive line is just moving them out the way. And it was great to see. So, David Montgomery, we'll talk about you a lot more today.
It wasn't, like not even just defense, or not even just David Montgomery. The offensive line in OT, like having the game that they had where they struggled a little bit, and you could tell like there was struggles like throughout the game for that O-line, the best offensive line in the NFL, mind you that. And then for them to come into overtime and just say, we're going to we're going to toss you around like you're a child, and we're going to sit there and we're going to move you. Like there was nothing the defense could do with that offensive line there. Nothing. And David Montgomery, I think David Montgomery gets all the credit in the world as well for running the way he did. He was incredible. But the offensive line stepping up and being like, hey, let's go get this thing done. And you saw the national media, so many people were tweeting after the OT win, and this morning too, like rewatching the game. A lot of big names that went and rewatched the game were just like, this offensive line is different. Like adding Kevin Zeitler, Taylor Decker, Frank, Panay, Graham, like these guys, when they get going, they just might be unstoppable. Like realistically, like in that overtime, if they play like in that overtime and they play like that in 4 quarters, that is ugly for the end. Like they're unstoppable, especially with a guy like David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't know a team in the NFL who can stop the offensive line when they're playing at their best. There's not one defense in the NFL. I would love someone to try and name one for me.
I think that was just a classic David Montgomery, Detroit Lions offensive line legacy drive. Because that's what it comes down to, why it's so important in knowing your identity. Because when shit hits the fan, when the going get tough and you're going up against a good team, you know what you have to lean on. We saw with the Green Bay Packers on Friday night, even with the Baltimore Ravens on Thursday night. Those are both very good teams. But week 1, neither of those teams really knew their identity. I mean, the Baltimore Ravens had Derek fucking Henry and Lamar Jackson and still did not run the ball enough against a very good defense in the Chiefs. But that's a good team where they were still trying to figure out their identity between that game. With the Detroit Lions and this offensive line, it's going to carry them so far, just because Booner's point, like everybody was like, wow, like who is stopping that? There's no way, because it's not like you're just picking apart a defense and you can make adjustments in your secondary. Like, no, everyone knew in Ford Field, on that field, in the stands, wherever you were at, you knew the Detroit Lions were running the ball. They literally ran the ball every time that drive, except for once, and it was a check down to Jahmyr Gibbs, which is an extension of the run game. First play, Khalif Raymond for 12 yards. And then it turned into the David Montgomery show. David Montgomery, 21 yards. David Montgomery, 9 yards. Jahmyr Gibbs, short right pass for 10 yards. Then you have Jahmyr Gibbs left for 3 yards. And then it just turned into David Montgomery, all the way down to the end zone. Everyone knew what was going to happen on that field, but no one could stop it for that Los Angeles Rams defense. And that's what Super Bowl teams are built off of.
Yeah, it's got to stink too. Like Ben Johnson, one of the most creative offensive minds. He didn't even He didn't even get out this like complex concept of, we're deception. And he just said, fuck it. We're just running the ball and you're going to stop us. And they just couldn't. Like that's got to be that's just got to be tough for any defensive coordinator and defense. Another player that we'll get to, and I want to play this because he did speak to the media, which I'm assuming he will do a lot more this year as kind of, one of the key players speaking to the media is Jameson Williams. They asked him about just a big game and what his plans will be kind of moving forward, if he plans on, duplicating that. And here's his answer on that.
It wasn't even your best game. Do you feel like there's still?
Oh yeah, for sure. This just game 1. Like I said, I put in a lot of work. I expected to have a big game. Me personally, I expect to have a big game. I guess this is just big to the world, just because it's my first one. But I plan to have a lot more, I don't plan on this being my best game of my career. I plan on this just being the starter, me being me.
Well, there's your answer. He's going to do that a lot more. And then you asked me, I don't know, it was last night too, Lucas, or earlier this morning we were doing it. We did another show this morning. Would I be shocked if he had another 100-yard game? Like I just, because the guy just can. And we'll talk more about it later, but just big playability. Like he had 100 and something yards on like 5 catches, 130 yards, whatever it was. And he just made it look, you look back, you're like, wow, he had 100 and something yards. Like it just seemed like he had a bunch of big plays and they just totaled up. It's impressive. Big for Jamo, which we'll dive more into that later, but huge for Jamo. Boys, I do want to ask you, because I want to get into our takeaways, and we'll get more into offense, defense, individual players, break it all down. Appreciate you guys for joining us. Give me some of your takeaways from yesterday's game. Some takeaways.
I mean, my biggest takeaway it had to be starting with Jamison Williams. I mean, we just got done talking about it, but the whole question mark around this offense was what is going to be the situation at wide receiver 2. You lose Josh Reynolds, and you have a guy with Jamison Williams who had around 350 total receiving yards in his career. Obviously, had the injury and the gambling suspension. He was just a big question mark. But the question mark was just the availability, in my opinion. Like, you could not deny the talent. You could not deny the situation that he is in to produce. Having Jamison Williams step up in the way he did when Amon-Ra St. Brown only has 3 catches for 13 yards. Sam Laporte only has 4 catches for about 45 yards. Someone needed to step up in this passing game, because when you have that Los Angeles Rams offense with Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay, they're going to find a way to get down the field regardless. And if you fall behind or in a close game like the Lions were in that second half, you need someone to spring the ball game open. If you don't have Jahmyr Gibbs going in the run game, Amon-Ra's not going in the receiving game, you don't really have a game breaker. And when his number was called, Jamison Williams did what this whole offense was missing. They were dead last in the NFL last year in deep balls outside the hash on the perimeter. Jamison Williams came in week 1 and showed you that he is that deep threat that he was at Alabama. He was running through all 3 layers of the field, and when it mattered most and his number to be called on, he was dependable and consistent. So that's what this offense needed. And like I said, this is a guy that if Amon-Ra were to go down for an injury, I think everyone in Detroit should have confidence that Jamison Williams can step in as a wide receiver 1 for this offense and produce.
Am I up?
Unless I can go.
Nah, I got it. Let's go, boys. I don't know. The biggest takeaway, I mean, for the game, I mean, I think it's obvious. Both sides of the ball were bad at times. Like, this wasn't a pretty game at all. Like, you could say like Jamo, D-Mont, like, and I have the Kool-Aid pitchers later in the game or later in the show to hand out. And like, I feel like at least for the Kool-Aid pitchers, I have 4 guys, 2 guys on each side of the ball. Like, in a normal game, it should be easy for me, just like one guy, but it's like, it was like spread out. Both sides of the ball were bad. And if you don't think they were, then like, you just weren't watching the same game. Like, I think it's like, yeah, Victory Monday, we can run victory laps around in circles. The game was rough. Like, Dan and all them keep saying, like, we're just happy to come out with the win, because they know that all around it was a bad football game. So, like, my biggest takeaway is, like, this team, even though you're 1-0 right now, the ceiling, the growth, every single thing that's left of this football team to be able to find a way to get better, like, you're at the ground, you're at the bottom right now. Like, and that's not a bad thing, because you're sitting at 1-0. You are sitting at the bottom. Like, you just played the worst football game. I already said it earlier. You just played the worst football game that you ever played. Like, in probably that. Jeff, was that worse? Probably you would say since the Baltimore game, in my opinion. Like
yeah.
That it felt like that to me at times throughout the game. Did I have? And this is the thing too with it. I had zero worry about losing that football game too. Like, the SOL stuff to where it's like, oh, this is over. Like that. There was not 1 inch of me. Like, last night when we were on the stream, I looked at you boys and said, hey, boys, like what are we so down for? Like, get positive. Like, it's 20-17. The Lions are about to get the ball back, go win the football game. Like, there's so many opportunities. And then going to OT, like, let's get a stop and go down and kick a field goal to win the game. Like, the opportunities and the thought process of the SOL stuff, even when you're down and you're playing probably the worst football that we've seen in almost a year of Detroit Lions football, to not even have that thought slip in our heads. And some people did. And if someone in the chat, there's people in the chats last night on Twitter, if you were in there talking about that, go to a different city and cheer for a different football team at this point. Like, no one needs that. No one wants that. I mute all of those people on Twitter. And it's those people who hate on Jamo, who hate on all these other guys, and Jared Goff. It's the same people over and over and over. I just, that's my takeaway with it. It's just like, hey, and now you have a chance next week to learn, to build, go get better. Like, that's what the NFL is about. And now you get to go play the Bucs at home, a beat up Bucs team. Mind you that, like, this Bucs team's going to be beat up. Go beat the Bucs. Go to Arizona, take care of some business. Come back home and play Seattle and change that whole narrative with Seattle, and then beat the Cowboys and end that whole Dallas Cowboys streak and go out. Like, you have so much ahead of you. And if that was your worst football that you're going to play of the year, like, hey, this team's going to go. This is the best team in football at the end of the day. That's what I take out of it. And I know they played the worst game. I don't know if it's crazy for me to be like, my biggest takeaway of this whole game is that this is the best team in the NFL, because they still dominated down the stretch. and they played the worst football that we've seen in 12 months out of Detroit Lions, Dan Campbell's regime since probably year 2. Am I crazy for that?
Yeah, I mean, no, go, Lucas. Go.
I was just say I'm not really, just because of what I saw out of the Chiefs, 2-time Super Bowl champs. I think their offense got better and they just beat a really good team in the Baltimore Ravens. I don't know if I'm ready to put them above them yet, but this is a good way to start it off because I do like the point of what you're bringing up about like, there's not going to be another game when Amon-Ra St. Brown has 13 yards. There's just not. That is his career low, and it will probably stay that way outside of an injury happens. You look at Jahmyr Gibbs, 11 carries, 40 yards, had a couple receptions. He had a solid game, but they never really got Jahmyr Gibbs going. I doubt that's going to be the case going forward. So they're definitely going to be – I'm not ready to put them above the Chiefs yet, but I'd put them right there with them.
And well, in that case, I think it just solidified to me that they're a very good team. Like before, when we talked about them, they're behind the Chiefs. Today, I think they're in that conversation still. So it's not that game like significantly moved the needle, but to your point, Boone, like it just reminded you that they're a good football team. They can play like shit and still win. I mean, you just saw the Bengals play like shit and lose. And that's a team that I picked to win their division. So they definitely deserve credit for the way they played, especially down the stretch. I think my biggest takeaway was the defense. And for a lot of reasons, the defense, and I know we'll dive into it more with like talking about different players. But last year, not even just last year, but since Dan Campbell got here, AG got here, AG's been under a lot of scrutiny for getting this defense right. And of course, personnel has always been an issue. But the biggest thing is when you're looking at a Super Bowl contender, you have to have a good defense, at least a defense that can keep you in games. You don't have to have the 85 Bears, but you got to have a defense that can at least get the opposing offense off the field at times. So again, if you have a top 5 offense who can score as efficient as the Lions can, then that's a recipe for success. Or if the Lions offense is having a game where they're not playing well, the defense can keep them in it like they did yesterday. That if this was the Lions defense of the last 2 years, that game might have been over, man. Like there might not even have been an overtime because that defense would have given up 30 points and you would have been down. So I think the defense deserves a lot of credit. AG deserves a lot of credit. And for having a rookie starting in your secondary at corner and the defensive line, you didn't have DJ Reader and you're playing Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay. I don't care about the injuries. Yeah, 4 offensive linemen out. You still have one of the best offensive minds and a very, very good quarterback, and they held their own. So big shout out to the defense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, love the defense, and I will get into it more, but I think the defense as of right now on social media, just kind of seeing through Lions fans, like a lot of people are upset with it. And when you just look at the box score, I know that there was some point just because Matthew Stafford was getting everything he wanted underneath. But when you look at that box score and you look at Rams total yards, what they got through the air, who they got it through the air with, and then you look at the rushing yards, I'm not upset with this defensive performance at all. There's obviously things that they can correct and you want to correct, especially in the secondary. But there's also some very good plays out of that secondary. So for the first week against this offense, against Sean McVay, who's had weeks to prep against this defense, I think as a Detroit Lions fan, head should be held high after this first week.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that the secondary being new guys, I mean, we talked about it, but defense held their own. No, go on, Boo.
The defense held their own in the first half, and then it's like the third quarter and the fourth. Like, there's just I can't get over the just giving up these chunk plays just consistently. It's just like the secondary made plays. Like they have talent, and like Brian Branch at times made plays, Terrion at times, like Carlton at times, but like the give and go. Like, how much are you going to give to like give up? Like, we could take out a handful of good plays that were made. There was still decisions that were made that were bad from AG down like throughout the game. Like they should have never got back into that game. And I know the offense was struggling, and we could talk about the offense at points to say like, hey, what was Ben Johnson doing? Amon-Ra St. Brown wasn't getting involved. Sam Laporta wasn't getting involved. Jared Goff had a bad game. And if before someone says, oh, Booner, go out, Jared Goff came out in the post game and said that he had a bad game making decisions and checks and everything he was doing at the line. And he was struggling figuring out how to get the ball to St. Brown and Laporta. And he said that was all on him. So we could talk about that. But on defense, like it was not that good. Like the defensive line and linebackers were great. The secondary, like if we're just being honest, the secondary, like you just kept giving up plays and like you kept missing tackles and you kept like I don't care if it's short routes, you're in a zone. I don't know, like either it's AG or the players have to start making plays. But you can't hold a team to what was it, 3 points in the first half or 0 points in the first, whatever it was, and then come out and let them come back when you're up 17-3. Like that should not happen. Even if your offense is struggling, we talked about all preseason long and all offseason long, we need a top 10 defense to go win a Super Bowl. That was not a top 10 defense. Like the pass defense yesterday is 30th in the NFL after yesterday. You had the 30th worst pass defense in the NFL yesterday. So there is no to Dan Campbell's point, there are things to take out positively from the secondary. Yes, we know that. Terrion's a rookie. He had 2 pass interferences, and he was the first one to say it after the game that he sat there and he was like, hey, that was on me. I need to turn my head and make the play. And like that stuff he did at Alabama and the NFL, he's like, I had to make those plays. Once you fix those things, I believe this is a top 10 defense. Like me saying last night was bad. I still think next week you out and dominate the Bucs and you turn into a top 10, top 15 defense and you start working your way towards that. You have the talent. But like, and this isn't an overreaction, a week 1 overreaction at all. This is just like watching the game. The secondary struggled. Like there were times AG went into his zone. Like there were times where like this was not good. Like you were giving up big time drives.
And I guess I get it. I mean, I wouldn't say they played bad. Maybe that's where we disagree. Because even Dan Campbell, what did he say? I watched his post-game press conference. That was their game plan. Like all those completions we were mad about, like that was the game plan because they were in zone coverage and they didn't want these big plays downfield. So they were basically allowing, which I know it sounds dumb, but they would rather Matthew cut them up 8 yards, 8 yards, 8 yards than, and there were a couple big plays, absolutely. But that overall learning that, I'm like, okay, that does kind of make sense. Even though Puka went out, it's like, hey, we'll give you the 8 yard, we'll give you the flats, but we're not giving you these huge plays downfield, which after the offense went 3 and out, and the defense kept going back on the field, they were worn down at that point. That's when the huge play by, I don't even know who it was, whoever the wide receiver that everyone
Tyler Johnson.
Yeah, Tyler Johnson. So I get it, Boone. Like they definitely got to improve. They definitely.
Yeah, this isn't me.
Yeah,
this isn't me saying that they were like terrible at all. It's just say like, let's not say like the secondary had a great, there was times where it was like, all right, they looked great. But even if you are like Dan Campbell, I'm sure their plan was, and I'm sure he would tell you too, would be the first to say like, yeah, we want to give up those smaller yardage plays. Like we're going to take away the deeper routes, but we're going to give up shorter yardage. We still need to make plays and still get stops and force punts. Like that's still the goal. And there were a lot of times where they didn't do it, and they did get down in the red zone, and they were able to not break and force turnovers with Kirby, force field goals. Like they were able to do that, and that's where the defense is like, all right, this defense has a ton of potential. Like they got to stop it. Like in years past versus Seattle and these different teams, you need to stop in Ford Field on 3rd down to win a football game and get the ball back to go win. They weren't getting those a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. They got that last night in Ford Field. Like they got the false start, pushes them back, gets a stop on 3rd down, force a pump to go get a Jake Bates field goal. Like that is exactly what you need to do. But you need to find a way to do that the whole time. And yeah, people are like, oh, they hold them to 20 points. Like, yeah, that is big time. 20 points is big time. But if you just look at the second half, like that's where it was like, you can't have those slip ups in the second half. Like you cannot. And I think there are some like improvements to work on, especially with those. Like Brian Branch, for example, missed the 2 tackles. Like if you guys are telling me guys played bad, Brian Branch came off the field and Dan Campbell said he looked right at him and said, I won't miss those 2 tackles again. Mm-hmm. So like there was uncharacteristic mistakes last night. That happened. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the defense as a whole. I'm just saying there were mistakes that were made. Like Terrion's the pass interference, turn around. And he knows it. He said it. Like Brian Branch, make the tackles. He knows it. Carlton Davis, catch the ball and make the interception. Like Terrion said that. He was like, I went over to Carlton and said, what are you doing? Catch the ball. Like you need to make those plays. So once they clean that stuff up, this is a top 10 defense. Like they have talent all over the field. They have so much talent. I think the linebackers and the defensive line played up to what they were supposed to. I think as soon as you get that talented secondary going, because that was probably the most talented group that we felt like going into the year. As soon as they get going, they're going to hold teams under 17 points. Like it's going to be tough for teams to score, especially at home.
Yeah, I am curious. I mean, the secondary is going to take a couple of weeks to get gelled. The front 7, solid run defense. I think they allowed like 3.5 yards per carry. And the run game had a couple very minimal big plays like in the run game. So I guess when you look at the positive, that was a huge positive. So I'll ask you guys. We'll go to we'll just stay on the defense and we'll go to the offense. Give me a defensive MVP to you and why. Boone.
What defense? I'm sorry, I was reading a comment in the chat. I was reading Purple Prince. The Purple Prince said, Booner, since you were disappointed if it doesn't get better, what week are you calling for AG's job? AG's job shouldn't get called for a while. That's not the farthest away from what I'm even insinuating. I'm sorry, Jeff. I was reading that. I saw AG's job, and that instantly had me like, what?
Okay. Defensive MVP to you.
Defensive MVP. God, this is an easy one, actually. This is an easy one. Can I pull up? Jeff, can I pull up a tweet for this one?
Yeah.
I want to pull up a tweet here real quick for this one because I went digging today. I went and started digging for some guys and for some stats. There was one guy, and very underrated performance, and I don't think we're all talking about it enough here. Aiden Hutchinson, though, he has and Anzo. Listen, boys, and I'll let you guys. Klotz, I'll save Anzo for you. You can have Anzo. Aiden Hutchinson, though. Look at this, fellas. Look at this. I tweeted out today. Aiden Hutchinson in the entire NFL, and I know this is like fit my narrative. Aiden Hutchinson, defensive player of the year. No. Aiden Hutchinson was the best pass rusher in the entire NFL this weekend, without a doubt. You guys see it. So I put the stats out. 11 total pressures, first in the entire NFL. And these weren't pressures like, last year he was getting there, wasn't even close. He was putting Matthew Stafford in the worst positions possible. The worst. And then you go down 95.7 PFF pass rush grade. Best in the entire NFL over Max Crosby, over Michael Parsons, over anyone out. He was the best pass rusher in the NFL. 6 quarterback hurries, second in the NFL. 4 quarterback hits, second in the NFL. And he got a sack, which is, there was a couple guys that had 3 and 2 sacks week 1. You know how that goes. Some random jag gets 3 sacks somehow, some way on the side of the road. But Hutch goes out there, and he should have had more than 1 sack. I was going back and looking. This man, like, as an all-pro edge rusher this year, in my opinion, the disrespect he gets from refs, like some of the plays that were put out of him getting face masked, of him getting just tackled when he's about to get Stafford, getting held, getting tripped, is unbelievable. This man should have had at least 3 sacks yesterday, and that is not an over-exaggeration. Like, that is legit. I saw 3 or 4 clips of him getting right to Stafford and then just getting tripped, or getting to Stafford in a tackle, just tackling him. And it's just like, at what point does the NFL step up and do the refs step up and say, hey, this is one of our premier pass rushers. Other guys get these calls, Michael Parsons, Max Crosby, these guys get these calls. What point are we just going to say, hey, let's get this to Hutch? Let's do this. Let's get this to Hutch. And even on top of that, I want to see if I can pull up. I want to pull up one more thing here for you guys, because this Aiden Hutchinson stuff, I'm telling you guys, like, this kid is on a different level. I can't call him a kid. I think he's younger than me. Someone said, Booner, stop calling. If they're younger than you or older than you, don't call him kid. He is younger than me. That is a fact. Okay, that is a fact. All right, I need to share this one more. Hold on. How do I do this? Get this, Booner. Here we go. Last one here. I'm sorry, boys.
All right. No, you're good. Let's see it.
Aiden Hutchinson. Ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
47.8% pass rush win rate, the highest in the game since 2021. This man was on a different level yesterday. And just because he didn't go out there and finish some of the sacks, he got tripped, he got pushed, he got tackled. This man was the best player on the entire football field yesterday. Offensively, defensively, it was shown. He looked like a Nick Bosa, a TJ Watt, a Micah Parsons. He dominated that game. He dominated. He made Matthew Stafford second-guess everything. And when it came down to it down the stretch, when Matthew Stafford had to make a play, guess who went in there and got the sack and finished it off? Aiden Hutchinson did. So all of you guys said, oh, it was a bad, he shouldn't have had. Like, this man is on a different level. He's already should be in the defensive player of the year conversation. He was the best all-around football player in the entire Lions-Rams game last night, in my opinion. There are guys like D-Mont who put the game on his back and had the game-winning drive. Guys like Ansel who had 13 tackles and was all over the field. Aiden Hutchinson was an all-pro defensive player of the year yesterday on the field, and that is not a question that anyone could kind of debate there.
Yeah, I mean, he took advantage. They had backup tackles, and he absolutely took advantage. Because if he didn't,
Sure.
people would be talking about it. You know, like people would be like, "Well, why didn't Aiden take advantage of this backup?" Well, he just did multiple times. I mean, the 47.8% win rate, like that's ridiculous. I do agree with you. My MVP to me, and I said this earlier too on our other live stream, that it should be Aiden Hutchinson, because number one, I think the defensive end specifically, one of the most important positions in football. You saw that because of how he can affect the quarterback. Matthew Stafford is so good at getting the ball off as quick as he does that sometimes even a guy like Hutch, who gets there so fast, he's not going to be able to get the sack, but he's making his presence known. So I will give him that. He had a hell of a game. He made those guys in the secondary's job easier when he was getting to Matthew Stafford as quick as he did. So Aiden Hutchinson, rightfully so. It's a way to start first game of the year. So I'm with you, Boone. I agree with that.
And you guys both go with Hutch.
Yep.
Yeah, and true with Hutch too. He will do this every single game throughout the whole season. Like what we saw out of him yesterday, he will do that. And he already has the 1 sack. He's on pace. Let's just be honest. He's on pace for 17 sacks this season. I know we're 1 game in, but he's going to have multiple sacks games. He's going to go out there, and he is going to lead the NFL in pressures, quarterback hits, pass rush rate, sacks, everything. Like, it's unbelievable what he did yesterday.
I love Hutch. Hutch went out there, dominated. I think you saw his spin move on full display. He was dominating one-on-ones, to Jeff's point, as he should have, because you have second and third string guys in there. But in my opinion, clearly, you saw from the first snap, the defensive MVP yesterday was Alex Anzalone. 13 tackles, 3 behind the line of scrimmage for tackle for loss. And he wasn't just doing it in the run game. He was doing it in the pass game as well. Cooper Kupp motions across the line of scrimmage. They're trying to read the defense so they can see if it's zone or man coverage. Alex Anzalone sniffs out the screen right away and makes sure that the first Rams opening drive goes absolutely nowhere. He was flying around the field. If there was a tackle, Anzalone was either making it or he was right behind to clean it up if it was a missed tackle. When you look at Alex Anzalone yesterday, he was the fastest player on the defense. And that's the thing with Anzalone. People are like, well, I don't know how athletic he is. He's got a limited skill set. If you watch Alex Anzalone at the beginning of last year till now, that is a Pro Bowl linebacker. If you watched him last night, I'm not saying he's going to be an all-pro linebacker, but last night he played like he was an all-pro linebacker. The Detroit Lions do not win that game with Alex Anzalone. I think he's one of those guys that is just completely overlooked when you look at all the star power that this defense and offense has. Alex Anzalone is a guy that is swept under the rug constantly. He's just a guy that, again, I don't think he'll have 13 tackles next week, but he's going to be one of the leaders of the defense from week 1 until the Super Bowl. And Alex Anzalone is just one of the most important parts of this team, not just this defense, but this team. Alex Anzalone, for me, is the clear MVP of this defense last night.
Yeah, those two guys, I mean, I'm not even going to be mad. I'm not even mad at the Anzalone pick. It's between those two. And and because of Anzalone, what he was doing everywhere, I don't hate it. You know, Aiden Hutchinson, to what you're saying earlier, Bruin, if he's going to be the best defensive end in football, I think this week against the Bucs, you got to follow that game up with not only a similar game, but you got to get like maybe 2-3 sacks this week. Like get back into that sack column. Just because I know you mentioned the guys, I was just checking real quick because I've been looking around at least the guys this week that impressed. I mean, there are some guys that you're like, who's it? 2 sacks from this guy? But there's Trayvon Walker who had 2 sacks. Like in Gregory, is it Rousseau?
Rousseau, yeah.
Rousseau from the Bills who just had 3 sacks. So he's got to get this thing going to where he's finishing, and I think he will. I'm not saying he will. I think he will because Matthew, I think, is more of an exception. He just gets rid of the thing so quickly. Like I think Baker, he can go out here this week, even though Baker's a little more mobile. And he can get 2 sacks and get back into that column. Because if we say 15, he's got to have at the minimum just to be in the race. He'll start getting these 2 sack games, which he had last year, by the way. He had multiple sack games.
For sure.
I mean,
I think if Aiden Hutchinson played that game versus 27 out of the 32 different NFL quarterbacks, he probably ends that game with 3 sacks. And it's not even just the fact that he only had 1 sack yesterday, Jeff. It's the fact that in every other edge rushing category, he was top 3. In every other category, he was top 3 in it outside of sacks. And he still had a sack. And he probably could have had 3 if things kind of would have flipped his way and there wasn't all these holdings and you weren't going up against Stafford. So, like, realistically to me, when you just look at broad, like, remember when Michael Parsons last year was talking about oh, TJ Watt shouldn't be defensive player of the year, this, and they were going back and forth at it. TJ Watt's like, I have all these pressures, I have all this, and then Michael Parsons like, well, I have the win rate, pass rush win rate. I have the highest one in the NFL. Guess what? Aiden Hutchinson just went out and got all of those stats, and it was first in both of those stats last night. Like, Aiden Hutchinson dominated in the entire game. I need to go look at his run defense and see kind of that. But for me, it's more so, what is he doing on these pass downs? And just because he didn't get those sacks, like, remember last year, we went through those stretch of games where it was like, he's not getting sacks, but he's getting pressures. And we were all arguing, like, well, at what point do you need the sacks? He got the sack last night, and he had the most pressures, the highest win percentage, and some of the most quarterback hits in the entire NFL. Top 3. So this guy should be in that conversation. And I'm with you, Jeff. Like, next week, go out there and get 2 or 3. Go out there and be in it. And I don't care if the people in the chat, I don't care if it was against a backup offensive line. He still did it. Like, he still went out there and did it. And he looked dominant. And shout out to Alex Anzalone, too. I have something on Anzo later.
Yeah, it's not like when they hold up the defensive play, when they hand out the award, they're like, well, he did play against an offensive tackle that was a backup in week 1. Like, they don't really.
Yeah, guys are going to go up against backups all season long. Like, it's just going to happen.
So if he does it, and we'll see, because we got a lot of football left, he gets a sack a game at 17 sacks. So, I mean, he could definitely get around that.
It's funny to me that there's like people in the media and like people in the chat and people out there who will be like, well, it was against the backup offensive line. Okay, so when Micah Parsons has 2 sacks versus a backup offensive line, like, are we going to all talk about that? Probably not. Everyone's just going to be like, hey, Micah Parsons just had a big game. You know what I mean? Like, in national media, none of that matters. Like, people are like, they want to see the performance. They want to see the numbers and the results. Right. That's all that matters. They're not going to go back at the end of the season and go, well, week 1 was a backup. Week 6 was a backup. Week 12 was a backup. Like, no, it's go out there and perform. Who cares who it's against?
I'll even say honorable mention, boys. Kirby Joseph because of the play. Like, I know and he was all around the football, and he had the pick in the red zone. He doesn't get that, they lose. And that's just that's the bottom line. He got it. It turned. Not only did it prevent a touchdown, but the momentum swung in the Lions' favor. It changed the outcome of the game. So Kirby Joseph, you can go Hutch, I'll go Kirby. You got Anzo. So we got 3 different answers there. Just because I got to get some.
Great.
That was a huge play. But hey, I'll ask you this: at least offensive MVP, because we did defensive MVP. Let's dive into some offense. Some guys because there's a couple guys that stood out to you that took home the MVP trophy. You think in your eyes?
Klaus, you want to go first in this one?
Offensive MVP, I know we were just talking about him, but again, it's got to be Jamison Williams. I think David Montgomery is another guy you can bring up, but for me, it's Jamo, just because we talk about how important it was to step up, because even when they went away from David Montgomery, when they went away from Jahmyr Gibbs in that 3rd quarter and even in that 4th quarter, the one guy that just kept making plays throughout the whole game was Jamison Williams. And Jamison Williams, when he's making those plays in overtime, your secondary, even though they know the ball is going to be ran, the Detroit Lions ran the ball 4 or 5 times. That secondary still has to sit back and wait for that play action because they know that it's going to be set up eventually. Now, the Lions didn't do that just because their run game is so good. But when you have Jamison Williams with 100 yards, 5+ catches, he even does it in the run game too. Jamison Williams was the most important part in the offense, in my opinion, up until overtime, but they don't get to overtime without Jamison Williams. Not only was he putting up production, but just the threat of him on the field through all 3 levels, I think that was a huge part that people aren't talking about as well. Jamo was the offensive MVP, and I think he's a guy that can go put numerous performances out there like this year. So it's not going to be the first time that we're going to say this about Jamo either.
I think I'm gonna switch it up here. I'm gonna switch it up. Give me D-Mont. Let me have D-Mont here. I want to go D-Mont. I think there's only 2 guys. There might be a 3rd guy that I'm thinking. I don't know if that counts as offensive, so I'm not going to do it. Shout out Jack Fox. But the D-Mont thing, like, Jamo had a massive game. Massive game. And when I hand out my Kool-Aid, my Kool-Aid things, you guys are going to see kind of my thought process of the entire game and the players. So I don't want to talk about it too much and get in like super deep into it. I just think the D-Mont thing, there was a lot of people who were on the Jahmyr Gibbs train, and we've had the conversations on our show, national media, everyone's Jahmyr Gibbs. D-Mont probably saw that, and he's talked about it post game. He talked about it all the time through the preseason. A lot of people forgot about D-Mont, and like David Montgomery, I've said it a million times now. This is a top 15 back in the NFL. Like, hands down, no question, David Montgomery is a top 15 running back in the NFL. If he doesn't have Jahmyr Gibbs in here, taking some of the limelight away from him, he's talked about is one of the best. Now, maybe not top 5 in the NFL, but if he's on a team by himself with the top 5 offensive line in the NFL, he's a top 10 back. He's putting up big time numbers. And this was the conversation we had before. Jeff, remember when we put the reel out of 2 running backs to have 1,000 yards, 2 receivers to have 1,000 yards? Great start for D-Mont. And everyone was like, well, Booner, D-Mont's the one that's not going to get it. This was my vision with D-Mont, was he's still, no matter what happens this year, every game D-Mont's going to get 15 to 17 carries. That is going to be it. He is, and the thing with D-Mont, he's going to get his yards. He always gets his yards. He'll get 60 yards plus a game no matter what. Like, this guy dominates. So I'll take D-Mont. And him putting the team on his back in overtime and saying, listen, I'm going to take this thing. I'm taking control of the game. No one else. Me and my offensive line. And that's what they did. And did Deebo Samuel change his number, by the way?
Is he still 19 or is he 1?
He's number 1.
Yeah, he changed it.
It's crazy. Right.
Yeah, I think offensive MVP, it's tough. It's between those guys. I would lean Jamo, given that behind Jamo, there wasn't really much. I mean, that guy was the entirety of the receiving core. I mean, and with all due respect, Sam Laporta made some plays, limited him. Jahmyr had a couple of plays. Amon-Ra was basically non-existent, which won't happen again. But Jamo was so important, and he had the biggest play of the game, biggest offensive play of the game, which was the TD, the 50-yard TD catch. So I would agree with that. Jamo, man, and again, I know we'll get into more Jamo later because I do want to go through the whole Jamo storyline from start to finish, when he got here, expectations, what people said about this man till last night and going out and doing it on a big stage. But I would agree with that. I think I do want to give credit to the offensive line for bouncing back, because I thought early in pass pro, and this is the thing about the Lions offense, not too many offensive lines are good at both, elite at both, pass protection and run blocking. They can do both at an elite level. And last night, early on, they give up that sack. Jared Verse gets a sack. Jared Goff's getting pressured. You know, it wasn't pretty, but when it came down to it, they showed up in the biggest moment. And so I do want to say the offensive line for getting it together. I know that Zeitler is the only really new one. The other 4 have been played together, so there's not really any excuse for that. And it was against a younger offensive line. Still a good defensive line, by the way. Very good for the Rams. But the offensive line bouncing back, they deserve a lot of credit too. I mean, the offense, the overtime. I mean, they just cleared. I mean, Dave Montgomery was incredible, but they were just moving guys. So I do want to give some love, a kind of a late MVP offensive line for obvious reasons. I mean, they got to get some love there.
Can I just say this about the offense too? The struggles yesterday, I feel like just were. You guys could correct me if I'm wrong. Like, it felt so uncharacteristic on like just the offense as a whole. I know we were talking to the MVPs. Like, there were guys, David Montgomery, and like, what world a week ago if I came to you guys and said, "Hey, out of this whole offseason, we've been talking about Amon-Ra, Sam Laporta, and Jahmyr Gibbs. Your week 1 MVPs on offense will be David Montgomery and Jameson Williams." Like, people would have been like, yeah, I mean, you could see it, but are both going to do, like, you know? And, yeah, and that's what happened. And it's like, when you just look at the offense as a whole, I was curious to see like the playoffs game versus now and like the possessions. And this is where, like, we talked about it this morning, fellas, like getting into some sort of rhythm. And like, they need to get in a rhythm, because like, you're probably not going to win a Super Bowl if every single week David Montgomery and Jameson Williams are your MVP every week. Like, you need to find a way, and I think Ben's going to do it. Find a way you have to, these next couple of weeks, to get Amon-Ra, Sam Laporta, like, get these guys involved. Like that yesterday, the possessions, 5 out of the 9 possessions in regulation were either a punt or a turnover. Like, that's not good. And then you look at last year, 3 out of the 8 were a punt or a turnover. So you only had 3 out of 8 possessions. So like, you had, it's just like, it's close, but it's just like, hey, you have to find a way to put these drives together a little bit more. I think you still had to keep giving David Montgomery the ball. Like, get that man the rock. Get Jameson Williams the rock. but like you have to put these drives together and you have to get more guys involved. And Ben's got to find a way to figure out, because it's a little bit of a change because there's so many more. You add Jamo into this offense. Some people act like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Josh Reynolds was decent. Jamison Williams is a top 15 potential. I'm not saying he's top 15 now, but top 15 talent when it comes to wide receivers in the NFL. So you're adding that into the NFL. Like, it's going to take time. Like, this is not a bad thing. It's just going to take time for Ben to be like, all right, how can, like, in game scenarios, like, it's so different than in training camp and in practice. In game scenarios, how am I going to be able to use Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, and Jamo together in the pass game? Like, how can I do that?
I think at Booner, you're spot on too, but it's also a combination of the Rams defensively. I think had the exact opposite game plan of what the Detroit Lions did offensively or defensively. When you talk about the Lions, that's an offense that kills you with 1,000 cuts. They take your offense out the field and they slowly, just methodically drive down the field. The LA Rams are like, okay, we saw you guys last year. We played against you. We know what your offense is. You're not stretching us down the field vertically. Like, you have to beat us down the field and make plays. We are stopping everything. Like, I think it was a combination of, you looked at it, there was multiple times where it was just Jared Goff trying to hit Amon-Ra St. Brown over the middle, trying to hit Sam Laporta on a drag, trying to hit Jahmyr Gibbs on a check down, where it was just out of rhythm. But if you look, all the linebackers, all the safeties, everybody was near the line of scrimmage in the middle of the field. The Rams try to take everything away from the middle of the field, and that's why I think why you have David Montgomery, who's just going to break tackles regardless. But Jamison Williams, they made them go to Jamison Williams because they said, if you're going to beat us, it's going to be deep with Jamison Williams, and that's exactly what the Lions did. So I think that's just a partial of the rust. And the Rams' defensive game plan was just the complete opposite of the Lions. They did not want the Lions to dink and dunk because you're not going to get Matthew Stafford on the field, because that's what Amon-Ra St. Brown lives off of. The dink and dunks, the little out routes, the yards after contact, making guys miss. Same thing goes with Sam Laporta, and they took both of those guys out the game.
I mean, I'll even add this. Oh, no, go on.
No, go, Jeff. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'll even add this NFL offense this week down. I mean, I think half the league didn't clear quarterbacks. Half the NFL's quarterbacks didn't clear 200 yards this week. So passing. So like offensive numbers are just down week one. And I guess an explanation for that, you could factor in preseason. So teams are rusty coming out for whatever reason. Like Joe Burrow didn't have 200 passing yards. It's just weird.
Yeah, Joe Burrow also lost bad too.
Yeah. No, but I'm just saying a lot of guys that like you look, you're like, oh, this guy didn't have 200 passing yards. Like a lot of guys had 140, 150, 180. A couple guys like Baker Mayfield had like one of the best games of the entire week. I mean, so when you look at it from a 4,000-foot view, offensive numbers were down. So the Lions offense struggling, not too surprising. I think in terms of the total passing touchdowns, the numbers down too for week one. So I think that a lot of that has to do with not playing in the preseason. So giving it more time, this offense is going to be back to a top 5 offense. I'm not worried at all.
For sure. I do think I'm trying to look for the comment. Here we go. A tour put this in, and this was like my mindset with all of this is first time in the Dan Campbell era, only 2 wide receivers had a catch. Like, that's not how a normal Ben Johnson offense looks. And it's like, yeah, we want to, like, D-Mont needs to get going, and maybe the Rams had a perfect scheme up to kind of stop this offense, and they knew what killed them in the playoff game. So Sean and them are like, all right, this is what we need to do to slow them down. And maybe that was it. But I'd still think, like, to that point, it's all right, guys, we're like, Ben, to go win a Super Bowl, you have to find a way to add something like this. This has to get figured out. And it's week one, so it's overreaction of thinking about it. But I think it's like growing pains. Like, this is a very, very good problem to have on the offense. And that's why I think it's the best offense in the NFL, because they were able to take out Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, and Gibbs essentially. And you still were able to go out there and win a football game and had 2 other guys that stepped up in big time spots and made plays. It's just like, all right, this to be able to get this offense going, to be the number 1 offense in the NFL. How are we going to get everyone involved? Like the Miami Dolphins is a kind of a good example, to be honest. And they've done it for the like they had it last year with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek and A-Chain and Raheem and Mostert. Like they had that already. So I think Mike McDaniels has a feel for it, and instantly he was able to figure it out. And I think as the Lions offense gets going, like it's going to be more like that, to where we're going to know how to use all these weapons. And you can try and stop our short game. We're going deep with Jamo. And we're going to have Sam Laporta deep in the middle of the field as well. Like, oh, you're going to stop us. You're going to try and take Jamo away over top, which they're going to have to do now. Okay, now we have guys down. Like, that's exactly what's going to happen with Ben Johnson in this offense. Like, he will figure it out. That was just yesterday, very uncharacteristic on kind of how the thing played out a little bit.
Yeah, I'll even add, I mean, guys, at least for Jamo, when you look and you kind of look at the entirety of it from when Jamo first got to Detroit to where he is now, what we know of Jamo is this, and we've said this a bunch of times. He's very talented. He's one of the most talented players that this regime, offensive players, this regime has had in terms of upside. No one's as fast as him. Now you add route running, he's developed that. Hands, he's improved that. Like, I don't know how any people that come out and say, well, Jamo, Jamo's a bust or Jamo's incapable of doing this or that, or maybe he can't be wide receiver too. I don't know what you're watching. I just don't. I don't know what you're watching that it indicates to you that this dude can't play. Like, when he had the game he had last night, we were all excited. It was like, oh, finally, the world gets to see Jameson Williams. But on the inside, we're like, not fucking surprised. Like, this is what he is, dude. Like, I don't, and that's probably why it's even more frustrating that people would be like, oh, don't take a victory lap too early. No, dipshit, because if he played bad, you would be taking a victory lap.
Exactly.
So you're damn right. People should celebrate. If you've been high on Jamo, you deserve, and especially Jamo himself, deserve to have that as a win. That's exciting. I mean, he just went out there week one in primetime, by the way, and had the production he had. And it wasn't in a 35-0 blowout win. It wasn't in a 0-35 blowout loss. It was it was a close, down to the wire game that took into overtime to win with the help of Dave Montgomery. But leading up to that, he was their most productive receiver throughout the entirety of the game. He was the only guy having big plays that resulted in touchdowns in the entire game on offense. So all kudos to Jamo. It's not just, well, Jamo had a couple big catches. We know we can do that. No, he was the MVP of all the weapons, all the weapons. So that's what matters for a guy that has had so much scrutiny because, he was injured his first year, and then people have the audacity to say, oh, well, he didn't really do much his first year. I mean, yeah, no dip, dude. They're not going to throw him out there when he comes back 75% of the season. At that point, he's just kind of being worked in as like a dummy, basically. And then year two, he's suspended. You're 1-6. You start winning games. He comes back. Why would you start forcing him the ball at that point anyway? So he's had this uphill battle to climb, which he's finally gotten to in a full off season. No interruptions, working with Jared, and the world gets to see what a lot of us already fucking know, which is he's talented. Like Stevie Wonder should know he's talented. I mean, everybody should know this man can play. It's just that's the fact. So I'm happy the world, and I saw McAfee talking about him. I'm seeing national media talk about him, and I'm so happy for him because he deserves it, dude. That guy, and we'll get to our winners and losers. I cannot wait for it. But that dude is special. He is absolutely special.
That boy from Bama.
I'm going to say this, Jeff. What you just said at the end, like, he deserves all the. Literally in my notes here, the first thing I wrote down about Jameson Williams this morning was Jameson Williams deserves all the praise in the world. Spot on what you said. Like,
you're right.
That is it. That is it. Because this guy took so much heat for so long. He battled through the ACL injury, and then it's not his fault. Brad Holmes traded up for him and picked him at 12 overall. But guess what? You're like, he went out there and he's like, all right, I've got to put my head down and grind. I have an ACL injury. Brad Holmes drafted him knowing he's not going to be ready for a minimum, probably a whole season. He knew it. Fans knew it. People knew it. But as you started getting down into the season and towards the end of the first season, people are starting to question, like, oh, Jamo's coming back? Like, oh, what are we going to see out of him? And he's getting back, and people are like, why isn't he playing like a 12th overall pick right away? Okay, and then he gets into the next year, and then you get the gambling suspension, was one of the worst suspensions in all of sports of all time. Never should have been suspended. Never. The fact that it was a 7-game suspension or whatever it was, and it comes back out that, oh, he's good after what, 3 or 4 games or whatever it was, that they just completely cut the suspension. They took multiple games away from this kid's career, just ripped him away from him for no reason after coming up later in the week being like, oh yeah, that's on us. We shouldn't have suspended him. Like, that's ridiculous. So we had to go through all of that. And then all of these online behind the computer people sitting there criticizing him for lighting fireworks off, for handing out waters or buying waters to from kids and doing all this. Like, this guy took so much heat. Jameson Williams took so much heat from so many people. And then the crazy thing to me, guys, is these same people who were like going at Jameson Williams all offseason, being like, oh, he only had 30-something catches in his career. Oh, he's only done this. Oh, he's only done that. We haven't seen the old Jamo. We haven't seen the Bama Jamo. Those same people will still today, after what he did last night, will be like, oh, well, he only has 36 catches now in his career. Oh, we still need to see it. If you watch the football game and you watch football and you have tell me you've ever watched a football game and know what talent looks like. Jameson Williams is fully back. Like, there is no question that Jameson Williams is back. If you watched him play at Bama, and if you're honest with yourselves and you legit watched him play at Bama and you have just watched what you saw last night, he is back. And if he stays healthy this whole season, which he did at Bama until the very end, he is going to be an absolute problem on this offense. Like, put this in perspective, guys. His first 2 seasons, when he was going through all this injuries and all this stuff, or no, not even first 2 seasons. Let's just talk about last year, 2023. 354 receiving yards, right? The man had 121 last night. 34% of last year's production in one game. 34%. Almost, like, that is unbelievable. He's going to do that multiple times this year, and he will have an opportunity to be over a 1,000-yard receiver. And people are going to look at him as a top 20 talent in the NFL. And that is a fact. After what you saw last night, it is just an absolute fact. And if there are people who still want to criticize and want to question him, you just don't know the game of football. Turn the TV on, go watch all 22, and go talk to me about Jameson Williams after watching last night. Because it's ridiculous, some of the people that still hate him and some of the people that will still question him. Last night was all you need to see. Now, if you want to have a conversation and say, hey, he needs to stay healthy and he needs to go out there and have a full season of health, all right, we can have a conversation. Let's not question this guy's football talent and what he could do on the football field. That was settled last night. There is no more bust card. There is nothing. It is all gone. This kid can play football, and his ceiling is very, very high. You have two wide receiver ones on this football team, not just one. Jameson Williams, wide receiver 1. Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver 1.
Jared Goff's about to be rolling out the Fab Five. You think Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Sam Laporta, David Montgomery, and Jahmyr Gibbs. There's not, even when the San Francisco 49ers have Christian McCaffrey fully healthy for a season, which has already looked like it doesn't even look like it's not going to happen this year. The offensive firepower for the Detroit Lions will trump any offense they're going up against. And you add in the offensive line and the possible improvement of the secondary, that Boone, if Jameson Williams can do this consistently, which I think he can, but still yet to be proved, just to what you brought up about the injury concern, that will match up with the Kansas City Chiefs without a doubt. Now, the difference is they got a man in Patrick Mahomes that sometimes it doesn't matter what the fuck you have. It just doesn't matter because it's Patrick Mahomes. But if you're going to go and try to beat Patrick Mahomes, specifically this year where weapons are reloaded, you're going to need a Fab Five of weapons just like the Detroit Lions have to go with a defense.
Hey, I love this too. Michael Lucci's put up, and listen to him too. He only talks about winning and wanting this team to not individual. That is spot on. Like every single interview. I know he's had some interviews now recently to where he's like, I want to be the best at my position, and I want to lead the NFL in receiving yards and this and that. Like that's just confidence, and that's what you want out of him. But do you guys remember the very first one of the first press conferences of the offseason this year when they got back from minicamp? And maybe I can go back and find it for tomorrow. Excuse me. But he was just like, they were like, what do you want to bring to this offense? He was like, listen, I don't want to come in and change anything. I don't want to mess with anything. They won without me. Like they went to the NFC championship game and they were winning. Obviously, he was on the team then and he was making plays. But before he kind of got back, like he was like, they went 8-2 to finish the season the year before without me. They were winning without me before I showed up. So they don't need me, but I can help them and I can help the Detroit Lions win football games. And he was like, that's the only goal. Jamo probably would be happy if he had 500 yards and he won a Super Bowl. That's all he wants. And I think that's part of it too. That's why I hate the Jamo hate is like, it's weird. And I get ignorant. It. Yeah.
Honestly, it's just people who stereotype somebody. They act like the man's Kadarius Toney or like Rashee Rice or something like that when the dude has got suspended for gambling on his fucking cell phone. That's it. I mean, we've seen
never got suspended.
We've seen wide receivers out of Alabama get in serious trouble, and then the people just put that stereotype onto him. So I just think Jameson Williams, a guy that you listen to him talk for 2 seconds in an interview, like, okay, this guy's this is a Dan Campbell type of guy. So I just think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, and there's such thing as arguing in bad faith. Like I think there tends to be that. Like I get what the only thing I will accept is got to see him healthy. Got to stay healthy. Okay. Like that's fair. But talent, there's no argument. And if you do argue it, it's bad faith, because context is something that matters when you make arguments. It does. So when you bring up a guy like Jamo and you want to read what he's done, you read the numbers, you look at his stats and be like, well, he's only had 300 yards in 2 years. Those people are arguing in bad faith. Like that, trying to cherry pick stats to prove something. For example, it'd be like if CJ Stroud, after his rookie year, or that's a terrible example because he had a historic rookie year. But regardless, anybody going out in their rookie year and playing well, or let's say they play decent, but the guy's very talented. All right, he comes out, he's like, all right. Or his second year at technically
Trevor Lawrence. Use Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence. Thank you. Okay, perfect example. So Trevor Lawrence comes out, struggles, and you're like, well, you look at the statistics he put up with Urban Meyer, the guy's a bust. And when you look, you're like, well, no, he's not. But if you want to use that argument, fine, you're wrong. And you try to look at what does he have? What does he have? Is it some talent? Are you seeing flashes? And then you saw the next year he played really well. So with Jamo, it's not about reading the stat sheet and being like, well, he had 300 yards last year. Watch with your eyeballs and see what the dude's doing. See what he's capable of. If you're watching him, you're not arguing. For sure, you're not arguing that he can't play. There's no way. It just can't. There's no way. There's no way anybody out there that says, well, Jamo, he's a bust. There's no way that person has been watching him or paying attention to what training camp has been. We were at training camp. He's routing up Carlton Davis. He's routing up Terran Arnold. He's routing up Ennis Rakestraw. He's routing up their best corners. And it's like, oh, well, it's a training camp. It's like, dude, get the hell out of here. There's no way anyone with eyeballs doesn't know this man has talent. So I just, that's where I'm at with it. I'm just glad he got it. I know it's one game, and I don't think if he does that every game, something's wrong with Amon-Ra, obviously. So he's not going to do that. He's going to have weeks where he has 4 catches for 50 yards. Just be a factor every single week with the workload. He got 9 targets yesterday. He'll probably get anywhere from 4 to 6 a week. It could raise, definitely, like last night if they really need him. But that is what you do. That's how you make a case. Like, hey, I'm here. So I love it. It's great.
I think, Jeff, the talent is that's what I think the biggest thing. And that's what frustrates me the most is when you get in these conversations. The talent isn't the question. The people, and then you'll get the pushback. Was your 12th overall pick? You traded up for him, so that's why he's a bust, because he's not putting. And this is what really makes me mad. He's not putting numbers up that a 12th overall pick should be putting up. Well, there's context to everything. He has 12th overall talent. He has the talent in the ceiling of a 12th overall pick. He's gone through a rough 2 years, ACL injury. You drafted him knowing that, and a bogus suspension by the NFL that put him behind, and he wasn't with the team for 4 or 5 weeks. That is going to affect anyone. I don't care if you're the best player in the world, maybe will come back, but anyone who hasn't played in the NFL yet and has gone through a full season off, and then you have to do another half season, essentially, that's going to affect people. So I'm not going to sit there and say, but the talent, the talent is a 12th overall pick. And you have to add in the context of this year, he's going into one of the best offenses in the entire NFL, first team All-Pro, wide receiver, tight end, potential first team All-Pro running back. You have talent on that team to where, hey, the numbers probably aren't going to line up to the 12th overall pick. That's not going to happen. You would hope, last night, that game you saw last night, that's a game with 12th overall pick has. So you're not going to get that every night because you have so many weapons on this football team. That is it. You have so many weapons on this team. Some guys are going to have their nights. Some guys aren't. He is not on a team on his own to where it's he's on his own, so he should have that every single night because he's the best player on the team, clearly. No, this is a stacked football team. That excuse is long gone for the people trying to say Jamo doesn't have the numbers for a 12th overall. That's long gone. They're very long gone, because last night he had a game that a 12th overall pick should have.
And when you look at it, too, Jared Goff, this isn't a completely unfamiliar situation for him, because when he was first drafted in L.A., they had Cooper Kupp, Brandon Cook, Sammy Watkins, and then Todd Gurley. Now, obviously, the Lions have David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, but Todd Gurley was a huge threat out of the backfield as well. So he had 4 mouths that he had to go to. And even Gerald Everett, he wasn't a slouch when he was first drafted to the Rams either. So Jared Goff, I understand there's going to be times where Amon-Ra St. Brown's going to have games like this. I don't think it'll ever be that bad again. But you can guarantee I would be laying the house on every Amon-Ra St. Brown over because he's going to find a way to get open and Jared's going to feed him. He's going to feed Sam Laporta and Jamo's going to get sprinkled as well. So I don't think there's always just going to be weeks where somebody's just completely dead offensively. There's going to be a lot of weeks where nobody's really going completely off, but everybody's getting fed and this offense is putting up 40 points. So this offense is going to look a little bit different week to week just based on who they're playing, but it's going to be an offense that's always going to have success against whoever they're going up against.
I wonder if he's done enough to earn a Kool-Aid pitcher, Boone. What do you think? You want to go through some of the guys that deserve that from last night's win?
Let's do it. I've got, and this is the thing, I typically would do 2 players, but the game was rough last night, and you guys know how I felt about the game. It was a long, tough-fought game. I picked 2 players on each side of the ball. Is that okay with you guys? Chat, people in the chat, is that okay? I picked 2 players from each side of the ball. I think, guys,
that's fair, bro. That's fair.
The stars didn't really show up in last night's game. The big stars that we've had in the past, it was guys that have deserved their flowers for a long time, and I want to give some guys their flowers. The Kool-Aid pitchers of the game, 4 Kool-Aid pitchers of the game. Here, let me see if I can get this. Jeff, do you want to pull those up, or are you able to?
I already got them. I just don't know who you're going to say first.
All right, let's save the defensive lineman for last. Let's start off with the other defensive player. There we go. Talk to me, Juicy J. This is why I didn't bring this guy up earlier in the show, is because I wanted to give him his flowers. I wanted my first Kool-Aid, the first Kool-Aid pitcher, the very first Kool-Aid pitcher of the entire NFL season. I am going to give it to Thor, the man himself.
Well deserved,
Alex
Boone.
Anzalone.
Love it, Boone.
This
Thor.
man deserves all the praise in the world. And Klotzy, I will give you all the credit in the world. What we talked about it, and I still think Jack Campbell's going to be great this year. I think he's still going to go out there and get 130 tackles. Alex Anzalone, what he did yesterday, if he goes out there and does it every game, which he probably won't, 100 or 13 total tackles,
it's an insane pace.
He would have 200 plus total tackles, and it'd probably break some sort of NFL record. But still, the 13. I'm gonna pull this back up, boys. Can we just throw that back up one more time?
I was gonna let you just go
read off of it. 13 total tackles, 10 solo tackles. That is insane. That is nuts. 10 solo tackles is insane. And then 3 tackles for a loss on top of it. Thor, and I'm going to call him Thor the rest of his life. I love Alex Anzalone. I tweeted out before the season started. I tweeted out the video of him just coming out of nowhere and sacking Geno Smith. Even though the Lions lost that game, it was one of the best plays I've ever seen him make. But Alex Anzalone gets the first Booner Kool-Aid pitcher of the NFL season. Very, very well deserved. Alex Anzalone, ladies and gentlemen.
I love it. Hey, I love it. Anzalone, and you know what? I should have saw it coming. Guy's Italian. I should have saw it coming. I mean,
You switched up, Iafrate.
I did. I went against.
He's out there. First play of the game, he's declaring Kyron Williams. He let Puka Nacua know, hey, you're probably not going to finish the game. If you don't remember, Puka made a guy miss, and Alex Anzalone probably launched him 4 yards into the goddamn sideline, and it was nothing to him. Like, Alex Anzalone, when he hits somebody, it is a car crash. And that's why he has 10 solo tackles, because he's hitting people, he's laying them out, but he's also wrapping up. Like, once Alex Anzalone gets you, I think, and I'm interested to see if you fellas disagree, but I would say Alex Anzalone, especially right now, is the best tackler this defense has. And when 100%. He first got to Detroit, that was his biggest thing. Is like Anzo would always be in a position to make a play, but he couldn't finish the damn play. He could sniff out a screen, but he'd whiff on the running back and they're going for 20 yards. Now, if Anzalone gets in a position, he makes the play every time, it seems like.
He's just there. He's just there, man. I mean, we said that last night. Guys just in the, I mean, my dad
have not seen Alex.
The first guy my dad brought up was Alex Anzalone. I mean, he was just appalled with how good this guy is. Yeah, I mean, he's just like, this guy was everywhere. He's like, you must be watching film. I'm like, yeah, he's watching a lot of film, Dad. I mean, this guy's a beast.
I do think the best thing about Alex Anzalone too, and Dan Campbell brought it up remember I brought it up last week actually when he was in New Orleans when they had and you guys will remind me of the linebacker, but the Drew Brees and then who was the star
Jonathan
linebacker.
Vilma.
Yes, and when he brought up saying how those two, they got so far into their careers to where they were so smart and they're just going back and forth with each other, checking plays, making audibles, and like he said, Anzo's on that level now. And after last year, Anzo took it. I went back and looked at some old Anzo tweets and some old things with Alex Anzalone after the 49ers lost. He's on a mission. Like he did the Players Tribune, or he did that to Detroit, like to the fans of Detroit.
Yeah.
Did that whole article, and he tweeted out, didn't watch the Super Bowl or whatever the whole thing was, and he tweeted out and was like, "I'm not gonna lie, guys, this feeling is terrible." And it feels like Alex Anzalone should have seen it from the jump. He took it very, very serious this offseason, and it was like, we're going to go win a Super Bowl. And the fact that he did what he did week 1 shows how serious that he is and how serious like this defense is with AG. And like, if you're a leader in the heart of your team and your green dot in the middle of the field is like that, that was a Pro Bowl. That was an all pro performance last night from Alex Anzalone.
Yeah.
All pro.
I agree, because there's not. I mean, I'd have to see Fred Warner's playing right now. CJ Mosley's playing right now, but I couldn't imagine that there's another linebacker that had 10 solo tackles week 1. You're talking about we love Brian Branch, we love Aiden Hutchinson. We think those guys are bona fide stars in the NFL already. Jack Campbell's soon to be one, but you have a guy right now who can be playing at a star level in Alex Anzalone. So you would just have an absolute dude at all 3 levels and all 3 phases of your defense.
And
that's what you
3
need.
tackles for a loss on top of it. Like this guy's just everywhere. He
one of them on tackles. Cooper Kupp.
Yeah. And the Kyron Williams. Oh my gosh.
I mean, I'll say Klotz, bravo. I mean, I'm not going to admit we'll see a lot of games.
No, Jack Campbell's still going to have a very good season. It's not
but you called Anzalone taking it to another level, and based off week 1, he took that to another level. Yeah. So I mean, I'm going to give you your flowers, even though it's game 1, but I don't give a shit. That dude was everywhere. I've never seen. I think that's probably the best performance. Is that stretch?
Maybe I'd say DeAndre Levy had some games when he was
in his Lions
career.
Of
his career. 100%. That was
that, or I forget. Maybe it was against the Raiders last year. But there was another game last year. But I would say for like on a primetime game, like against who they were playing, the players he was making them against, like Matthew Stafford, Kyron Williams, Cooper Kupp, beat Puka Nacua when he was in there. Like he was going up against all pro caliber players, and he looked like the all pro in those situations.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Jeff, before we go to the next part, can we do both offensive players? Let's switch to the offensive side. We'll finish with the defense. With the defense. So I picked 2 and 2. I went 2 and 2. And I think you guys can kind of guess and get a feeling for who these guys are. Hey, just keep getting these guys their flowers this week, because next week it's going to be the next guys. And that's why I love this football team so much. It's always next man up, next guy up. We just talked. We just did a whole segment on him. The legend himself. Waymo, baby. Jamison Williams gets the second. He gets the second, and he gets the first offensive Booner Kool-Aid pitcher of the week. That is Jamison Williams. 5 catches, 143 all-purpose yards and a touchdown. Very, very, very well deserved, Jamo. Again, we just did a whole segment on him, so I won't go too much on the Jamo stuff. We don't want to overdo that. But with Jamo, like, he deserved it. He got a game ball last night. Anzo as well got a game ball. Like, this kid, Jamison Williams, is going to be an absolute weapon on this Detroit Lions football team going forward, not just this year, but the next year and the next year. And he is going to continue to be a weapon for Ben Johnson. And honestly, guys, Klotz, I heard you say it earlier, like, will he have another 100-yard game? This guy is going to have multiple this year. This 143 all-purpose yards, he is going to have, I would say, like 5 or 6 100 all-purpose yard games at some point this season, spread out throughout the year, including the playoffs. So you play 20-something games, mark it down for Jamo to get 5 or 6, at least minimum 100 all-purpose yard games. And you know what? Mark that man down for 7 or 8 touchdowns this year as well.
Wow.
He has 2. Let's be honest, like, he didn't even think about. He could have broke another one off yesterday when he had these end arounds. Yeah. I said it on the stream.
He's gonna score 1 or 2 of those this year, bro.
Easily. More than that, I think if you give him an end around, you see it all the time in the NFL. It is so hard to stop guys that have that speed with an end around. Tyreek Hill, like, it is tough. And that was when we were inside the 20. I'm like, Ben, just call an end around for Jamo and let this man just go. Like, you can't stop it. Him coming downhill, it's impossible, especially if you have the right blockers out in front.
Behind Panay's stool.
It's impossible to stop.
Good luck.
It's impossible. So that's the second. That's the second one. The third, and this man deserves everything. Although the fan base should want to re-sign this guy tomorrow. Give this man an extension. Bring him back. Jeff Iafrate, I know you hate giving extensions to running backs. This man deserves an extension. You don't need to go pay him the biggest contract in running back history. You give him a contract. Let him stay in the city of Detroit. David Montgomery, the bowling
Monty,
ball.
baby.
D-Mont, 93 all-purpose yards, 5.4 yards per carry. Did you guys 5.4 yards per carry? That is unbelievable.
It's a
from
nickel every
D-Mont
play.
in the game-winning touchdown, and you see the celebration there. David Montgomery, guys, he deserves so much praise, and he is such an asset to this football team. When we said a couple weeks ago, we did a segment, and we said, who is the biggest X factor on this football team? And everyone went a big player like Jamo, Jameer Gibbs, Amon-Ra. My player was David Montgomery, and I think last night we saw why I picked him, and the whole reasoning behind it was you need this guy to set the tone on your offense. Open the game up. When D-Mont is going, your offense is going. When your offensive line's going, D-Mont's going. This guy is a massive piece to this offense. If you take D-Mont off this offense, you saw yesterday when they went away from him. There are problems. He sets the tone. He is one of the best bell cow backs in the entire NFL, and he is going to continue to do that. David Montgomery gets the third Kool-Aid pitcher of the week. And I know I should not give out 3. I guess in the chat, you guys can kind of tell me, Booner, this is how many you should give out each week, because 4 might be a little excessive.
Yeah, it fits the brand. Just give out the you get a Kool-Aid. You get a Kool-Aid.
You get a Kool-Aid. Everyone gets a Kool-Aid.
I like
Dan Campbell.
Hey, if you're gonna do 4 or do 1 on each side of the ball,
I like that.
But this Boone, like all your choices though are right. Like they're all like these guys are all important. I mean, they're all great. Anzalone and Hutch, no doubt, and Dave Montgomery and Jamo, no doubt, and then Anzalone, no doubt. So
yeah,
hey Boone,
Yeah.
I don't mind the 4. I don't mind the 4,
Yeah.
Boone.
No Jack Fox, Boone. No Jack Fox.
Hey, shout out Jack
mention.
Fox. Jack Fox had a good game. He had a great game. Jack Fox just did his job. He just did his job. I respect Jack Fox.
It was I was so mad, and I get it's a rookie, but like when Ennis Rakestraw knocked that ball out when it was down at the 2-yard line,
gosh.
like BMG said it, he was like that was like a golf shot where he just perfectly he perfectly placed it where he wanted to go, and it rotated back, and it was just sitting there. And Rakestraw was just flying down the field, and I think the Rams actually got a field goal or something out of that drive. But you talk about crucial moments. The Rams had to go about 80 yards for that last drive, and they got nothing out of it. So he was the guy that really flipped the field for him. Jack Fox, again, the best punter in the league, but you rarely see him just because how good this offense is.
Yep. You saw him a lot yesterday.
Bro's got a cannon.
You did see him a lot.
The Browns would probably rather have him as their quarterback than Deshaun Watson at this point.
All right, guys.
Jack
Last
Fox,
one. Last game ball. Or not game ball, sorry. Trademarked. Can't say game ball. Kool-Aid pitcher of the week. I think this is the man. If I would have picked anyone, and I'm shocked, he didn't even get a game ball from Dan Campbell yesterday. He didn't get a game ball from NBC or wherever the Sunday Night Football is. This should have been the man that got the biggest game ball. He should have gotten the only one. I think this was the best player on the entire football field, one of the best players in the entire league this weekend. That is the man himself, the hometown kid, Aiden Hutchinson. Throw him up there, Jeff Iafrate. The stat line that this guy put up is unbelievable. I don't like outside of getting the 1 sack, what he did yesterday to affect the game, to force Matthew Stafford to consistently under 3 seconds just get the ball out. 5 tackles, 1 tackle for a loss, 1 sack, 4 quarterback hits, 11 pressures. The very first PFF pass rush grade in the entire NFL over everyone. Second in second quarterback hurries. Like this man had an absolute unbelievable game. He showed last night, guys, and I know we talked about Hutch earlier. Just the fact that he showed exactly why he is top 5 right now in Defensive Player of the Year odds. Like he is going to be in this race throughout the whole season. I think yesterday, and I said it already today, he had the best overall football game yesterday out of any Lions player, any Rams player. I watched some different pass rushers. TJ Watt, guys, we watched TJ Watt play yesterday. I thought TJ Watt had a big time game. Didn't come close to the pressures that Aiden Hutchinson had. Didn't come close to the pressures Aiden Hutchinson had. No one did. I mean, 11 pressures is absurd. And again, I do not care at the end of the day if you're going up against me and I'm playing offensive tackle. I don't care if Jeff's playing offensive tackle. I don't care if Klotz is playing offensive tackle. Xavier D in the chat. I don't care if you're playing offensive tackle. Aiden Hutchinson needs to go out and perform no matter what, and he did it. He proved it. The thing with this is that people start saying stuff about Aiden Hutchinson. Oh, well, he didn't get enough sacks. He didn't get this. How about this? How about people stop moving goalposts for certain players on this football team? How about that? That's pretty simple, right? How about we look at what these players are putting on the field, stop moving goalposts, stop making excuses just for clickbait and just to be noticed. Let's not do that. Because I know there's people around this city who will still talk about Aiden Hutchinson and be like, oh, pressures are cute, but what about sacks? Pressures are cute. How can't you get the stat? Let's stop with the clickbait stuff. Let's be realistic here. Like let's talk about what let's be real life here. Let's talk about what it is. This man went out there and performed.
Yep.
One of the best defensive players in the entire NFL on Sunday, without a doubt. You can't question it. So someone, and if you're in the chat right now and you guys see clips around the atmosphere in Detroit of people talking bad about Aiden Hutchinson, send them to me. We'll handle it. Because there should not be anything bad out there. I would love to keep all the receipts. My Twitter, @Booner Sports. DM me every single bad Hutch take that you saw today. I didn't hear any, but I'm sure there was some out there. But no one should have a bad thing to say. And if they do, they're moving the goalposts, and they just don't like Aiden Hutchinson. They just hate Aiden Hutchinson. This man is the best. He is a top 5 defensive player in the NFL, and he proved it yesterday. He went out there and dominated that football game. He gave Matthew Stafford hell all game long. And I bet you if you ask Matthew Stafford, he'd be like, that was probably one of the toughest defensive edges I've ever been up against in my career. I promise you that.
Yeah, well, yeah, and this is where I'm at with Hutch, because I guess it depends on what your expectation is. I think Hutch has got a high ceiling. He does. Do I think he's in that top tier of Myles Garrett, TJ Watt? No, I don't. But I think he's right below it, and he's rising. He's still, those guys. I mean, but those guys make it look so easy, though. That's why I think they're in that tier. Top tier. I mean, even Nick Bosa, at least when he was, I don't know what he's doing tonight.
He already was sacked tonight.
Okay, so, but he's based off what he's done, though. He's got a Defensive Player of the Year award, correct?
Yeah.
So there you go. So Hutch is rising into that tier. And last night confirmed to me, yeah, he looked good. So I guess if people, and this is why, Boone, I'm glad you brought it up, because it goes back to what we said earlier, the context people. They don't like to bring up context. They just get more sacks. You're right. He has to be in Defensive Player of the Year contention and to get to that 15 sack mark we all believe he can get to. But you can still look at a game, watch a game, and see an impact. He made an impact last night. My expectations for him didn't drastically alter, like what I think of him as a player. But it just confirmed, like, yeah, he's pretty good. Damn,
I can't wait to watch him go against Wirfs this week. This is going to be a good battle, too, because I think that's the one thing where – but I'm not saying that Aiden Hutchinson didn't play good. Like, he was outstanding. But I look at, like, Micah Parsons this week had 8 quarterback hits and a sack. Like, if he can do that against that Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive front, then I think that instantly projects him, because people are going to be watching, because Tampa, Baker, they look really fucking good this Sunday. So them coming into town, playoff rematch, like, that's honestly probably, I know it won't be the Monday night game, Sunday night game. That's going to be the game of the week, in my opinion. So a lot of people will be tuning into that. If Aiden Hutchinson goes out, balls out against that offensive line, makes Baker uncomfortable, throws around Rachaad White a couple of times, that's bound to happen. That he's going to start, like Jeff said, and like you already think he is, Boone. He's going to be in that tier.
Guys, like, the crazy thing is, he's only going, like, this is his third season. Like, it's not like he's like already like 4 or 5 years. Like, this is his 3rd year, and he's already one of the best defensive players in the entire NFL. And like that's where I think the value is, to where you can, he last year he only had 11.5 sacks, but he's going to have 15 this year. And I don't think that's that's where I think a little people kind of veered is the word. Veered off of Hutch last year, was like 11.5 sacks. Whoa, but you still led the league in pressure. Like, I think just some people just got too mixed up and like overthinking the pressure thing. It's like, hey, that impacts the game in a major way. Like, yeah, you want sacks because, and I say it all the time, Jeff, we got in that argument last year about it. And I said it all. I agreed with you on that point, to where it was like, yeah, you get a sack. That's almost a turnover essentially, because you're like a 3rd down or 2nd down sack. You're going from 3rd and 10 or 2nd and 10 to 3rd and 16, 3rd and long. And it's like, that's big time. So yeah, you want that. But if you're forcing a quarterback to consistently rush a pass or throw away a ball or make a bad decision, and that doesn't show up on your stat sheet, but it's out there, and you just, some people who just like to stat watch and don't actually watch the game, like, yeah, that's realistic to me. So like he's one of the best in the game. And yesterday I think he proved it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're going to do our winners and losers segment because I want to give you guys my winners and losers, and these don't apply to games. This is about who won from last night's game in general and who lost from last night's game in general. So let me pop up my list, tell you guys who I thought who won and who lost last night. All right, you ready?
Let's do it.
Sir.
All right, let's do it. Here's my winners and losers. So we'll start. Winners, defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn. I thought he won yesterday because of the criticism he's got in the defense, although there is plenty to work on. That's a good start. Given the offense looked very bad, the defense at times looked bad, but they put it together and you held a team to 20 points and you were, a team that didn't just make everything look easy like they have been the last couple of years. So Aaron Glenn, good place to start here. Let's see how much they can get better. But I thought he won last night. Number 2, Jake Bates. He won. All right, 2 for 2, kicked a big field goal to force it into overtime in Ford Field, 60,000 people watching. And Jake Bates, whatever Bible verse he was mumbling to himself on the sideline, running back next week.
I was sweating.
Hey, a God-fearing man.
Yes, sir.
God-fearing man. All right, so Jake Bates, he won last night because, hell, he didn't miss any kicks. I don't care how far they were. And he showed out at home in front of the fans. Number 3, Applebee's won because you film a commercial with Dan Campbell, MCDC, and you go out and you guys beat the Rams on primetime. And guess what? Sprinkle a little bit of money on those Applebee's stocks, okay? Because now they have Dan Campbell in a commercial who in primetime was the story. And he's going to continue to be the story this year. Losers. Number 1, Matthew Stafford's ego. It's fragile, and it was hurt last night for sure.
Veneers. He thought the veneers would have him feeling different coming in Detroit this year. Those buck teeth didn't help him at all.
No, they did not. And Matthew Stafford, and he thought it was over with. They asked him again after the game, "What do you think about the Jared Goff chance?" I don't know, man. I don't know what you want me to say to that.
Yeah, he didn't like him. He
didn't like that at all. 0-2 returning back to Ford Field. Ego is shattered. Number 2, Puka Nakua's fantasy owners. I am one of them. We lost last night because he's on a week to week. He's out week to week with some knee injury. And I think everybody that has Puka or even Rams fans expected Puka Nakua to go out there and light it up. And he didn't. And he left early with a knee injury. I'm one of those guys. Puka Nakua fantasy owners. We lost last night. Number 3, Jahmyr Gibbs, offensive player of the year predictions. I'm sorry. It felt a little personal to put this on this list because I do really love you, Klotz. I do. And I say all that to say this. We were reminded, this isn't even about Jahmyr Gibbs not being talented or anything. We were reminded that, stupid me. He shares a backfield with a top 15 running back who's going to get a lot of carries. So the offensive player of the year take is a loser because he's not going to win offensive player of the year. He's still going to be very, very good. But hey, he's got Dave Montgomery. Name me an offensive player of the year who shared a backfield with a guy who almost got 1,000 yards and a guy who outplayed him week 1. So that's where I'm at with it. Winners, losers. That's my list.
That last one, it leaves a sour taste in my mouth, Iafrate. It does. Because I feel like now there's going to be this huge wave of just David Montgomery is clearly the RB1. I'm not saying that you guys would say that, but like he's the established RB1. When we all know damn well that we could be having the same conversation next week with Jahmyr Gibbs and the following week with Jahmyr Gibbs. So I understand like Jahmyr Gibbs probably like it was a reach. It was like, okay, he has the talent to win offensive player of the year, but it's not something that you're like betting the house on like he's going to win it. But Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be in a lot of these conversations he's going to be getting Kool-Aid jugs from Boone. He's going to be getting all those things. Jahmyr Gibbs is still going to be a great player, like you said. And it's just a matter of time till I think he's in that conversation. But I just don't want the narrative going where it's like Jahmyr Gibbs just the flash guy. You got to get David Montgomery going in order to get Jahmyr Gibbs going. Like, no, this is going to be a 1-2 punch backfield for a reason. But that was just a game last night where D-Mont was the hot hand.
And I'm a little bit on the side to where like Jahmyr Gibbs in Detroit won't win Offensive Player of the Year. It's just not like you got to think like in San Francisco, Christian McCaffrey can win it because like who's this backup running back? Like he's going to get all the carries. He's going to be on the field 80% of the snaps in the running back position. David Montgomery, as much as people want it or not, like David Montgomery is, again, I've been very consistent all summer with this. He will have 15 to 17 carries consistently every game. Like they will never take carries away from David Montgomery. We saw it last night. And like, unless he's just some sort of injury or it's like he's just having a bad game, which you don't see a lot out of him, he's going to get his carries and they're going to get Jahmyr Gibbs involved in the pass game more, find different ways. And maybe there's some games where they run a little bit more and get him a couple more carries. It's just David Montgomery's the guy that you're going to rely on and put him on your back. And he's going to have the 15 carries for 60 to 80 yards every game. And it's going to be tough unless Jahmyr Gibbs can go out there in a team that doesn't have another running back and doesn't have 3 other all-pro offensive players or all-pro. And he would go out there and be Offensive Player of the Year this season, like instantly. It's just about the usage rate. And it's just, to me, it's like, it's not realistic for him to do that on this offense. Like
You're saying ever
talent.
for this season, Boone?
I like in this, like at least in this season, like maybe if a guy leaves this offense and you lose a weapon, but like just with the weapons that you have on this offense, I don't see like the usage rate isn't going to be high enough compared. Like I'm sure if you put his usage rate, but at the end of this season up to Christian McCaffrey's last year when he was just getting every single carry and they're relying on him every single, like that's it's complete. It's night and day difference, I'm sure, and that's not a bad thing on Jahmyr Gibbs. It's just like I feel like that's just like a little like realistic
That's
on
how
how
it is.
Yeah, real quick. And the point I was making has nothing to do with his talent. Because I think he's really talented. My point is, as long as Demon's playing the way he's playing, he will not win Offensive Player of the Year in Detroit. Like the way if Demon's playing the way he's playing now, not just now, but the last year, it's just hard. How do you give a guy Offensive Player of the Year when you have an 800-yard at least running back next to him?
Yep.
Like that's important. Like he would have to be, to Boone's point, and I know you would agree with this, Klotz. Like if David just was shot out of a rocket into space and just disappeared, or he just left and was traded randomly, then honestly, Klotz, I think he could win it here. I think because they would be giving him a ton of touches. I just don't know about it. But those are my winners and losers, boys. I like my favorite one. I'm going to say my favorite one's the Applebee's one. And I'll also
good one.
I'll sprinkle in another one here. Another winner, Jameson Williams' agent. His agent won last night. Because now, and if he doesn't have an agent, then shout out to his family. They're winning. Because that stock starting to go up there. All right, who wants to go next?
Boone, you want it or I can go? Doesn't matter.
Go. Yeah, you can hit it.
Pull up mine, Iafrate.
All right, here's Klotzy's winners and losers from last night.
All right, I kind of stuck more towards with the Lions. I know Jeff was bringing up Puka Nacua and stuff like that. Not that there's anything wrong with it. I just kind of stuck with Detroit. Number one is the Detroit Lions rush defense. It allowed only 83 yards. And when you talk about how to beat the Los Angeles Rams, it's by not letting Kyron Williams, who had the most total yards from scrimmage out of any NFL running back last year. So they neutralized it. Aiden Hutchinson, huge part in that. Levi Onwuzurike, huge part in that. Alex Anzalone, huge part in that. So Detroit Lions run defense did not phase at all. It's right back to where it was last year, and it's probably going to get even better when DJ Reader returns next week. Alex Anzalone, we already had a segment on him. I don't really think I need to speak more on it. Alex Anzalone came out and let you know that he's the leader of this defense beside Aiden Hutchinson and one of the best players on defense for this team. And finally, the Detroit Lions safeties for the winners. If you look at Kirby Joseph, had that crucial interception, had 6 tackles. Brian Branch, I know he had those 2 early missed tackles early on, but he responded and he made numerous pass breakups. They don't win that game without Brian Branch, especially when you're talking about going up against Cooper Kupp, because when Cooper Kupp wasn't having his 14 catches, a lot of the time he was in the slot and Brian Branch was covering him. So Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph, they both had really good games, especially against that offense. They stepped up. Now my losers, Detroit Lions second half offense. Again, I would say the Lions rush defense didn't go anywhere. It returned, and so did those second half woes for the Detroit Lions offense. Coming out of the second half, and Booner talked about it early on, you have got to put more, even if you're not putting up points, you have got to put together longer drives. There was multiple 3-and-outs. When Jameson Williams had that huge touchdown, it was on third down of the first possession for that team on offense. So you have to find a way not only to get more points in that second half, but at least keep the opposing offense when they have a wide receiver like Cooper Kupp, especially when Justin Jefferson's in this division, Jaden Reed, all the wide receivers that are in this division. You have to find a way to keep those guys off the field if your secondary is not playing to an elite level. So that second half offense, it has got to improve. Secondly, Aleem McNeil. Now, I don't think Aleem McNeil sucks. I don't think he's going to have a bad season, but Aleem McNeil, there was no reason he shouldn't have dominated last night. I think when you look at that Rams offensive line, Jonah Jackson was their center. Aleem McNeil has went up against Jonah Jackson in practice and in these type of situations for his whole career. Aleem McNeil is a guy that we expect to go out and possibly put up 8 to 10 sacks this year just because how good he is. The fact that he didn't really show up, I would argue that Levi Onwuzurike had a better game. Aleem McNeil obviously could be drawing attention to give Levi better opportunities, but Aleem McNeil was a guy that I at least wanted to see half a sack out of last night. He had an opportunity to dominate. In my opinion, he just simply did not. And then number 3 was the Lions pass protection. Again, this is not something where I'm saying the Lions pass protection sucks. It's not going to improve. But another opportunity where the Lions should just dominate. I mean, Jared Verse had a sack. Braden Fisk, both these guys, rookies, had impacts in this game. We talked about it on the pregame show, and Booner was like, "Why?" Like Booner said, "You got to watch out for this defense because they have some guys over there." I was like, "I'm not concerned. We have the best offensive line in football. Jared Goff should have a clean game. He should be sacked maybe once." And through the first 3 quarters, you could argue that the Los Angeles Rams defensive front had their way with the Lions offensive front and the pass protection goes. And I'm saying strictly pass protection because we saw what happened in overtime with that run game. But pass protection with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers front 7 coming into town next week, it has to step up or this could be a drastically different outcome than it was against the Rams. They have to step up. But those are my 3 winners. Those are my 3 losers.
I like it. I like I know we didn't really talk a lot about Aleem McNeil. We'll probably dive into it more this week, but I would say last night I do agree with that take. And you know,
Yeah.
I think against the run, he was solid, but that's like we know he's solid. That's not why he's going to get paid $20+ million. It's going to be like his upside at rushing the passer, and you just didn't hear his name name called a lot. So I agree. I like this list. This is good.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I think the Aleem thing, the Aleem, and he spoke with the media today, and he seemed confident. He was like, when DJ comes back, you know, one thing that was interesting that he's talked about today, they asked him, they were like, "Are you excited for DJ Reader to come back?" And honestly, this goes along with the Aiden Hutchinson and stuff that I've been preaching about today. They were like, "Hey, are you pumped DJ Reader for him to come back so the double teams are off of you?" And he was like, "What are you guys talking about? Like, I didn't get double teamed yesterday."
Yeah.
He was like, the double teams were all over Aiden Hutchinson. He was like, Hutch, anywhere Hutch was, he was getting double teamed. And it was like, and he still had 11 pressures a day. Like, that's where I think it's a little more like, I would love to see the percentage of plays that he got double teamed because Aleem was I never got double teamed.
Did you see how far how far out they had Aiden Hutchinson aligned for the rest of the defensive line? Like, they had him like multiple gaps outside of Aleem McNeil, Levi Onwuzurike, Marcus Davenport. Like, they put him on an island. That's why I was saying, like, Aleem, like, how do you not dominate last night? Especially, like, the only time you really saw it was on that crazy throw that Stafford had where he was looking to the right and somehow he found DeMarcus Robinson when he wasn't even looking at him on a 3rd down. And on that first drive where Stafford tried to take a deep shot and just simply overthrew it because he had pressure around the interior. Outside of that, Aleem McNeil was kind of a ghost out there. And I think that's a guy we all have high expectations, and he's got to bounce back next week because he's a guy that if he doesn't show up for this defense, they're not going to be the same because they need somebody to get after the quarterback. Marcus Davenport did look good, but you have more faith in Aleem McNeil getting to the quarterback consistently than you do Marcus Davenport, in my opinion. So he's got to step it up.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, again, Detroit Lions rush defense, definitely a winner.
Elite.
But let's get to yours, Boone. Let's see what you got here.
Let's roll.
Pull it up. Okay, so Booners, winners, and losers. Talk to me, Boone.
All right, here we go, boys. You guys ready for this?
I'm
Yes,
ready.
sir.
Winners. Obviously, we talked about this a lot. This has to be number 1 because this was the conversation all offseason long was Jameson Williams, and everyone was questioning it, and he finally arrived. We got to see Jamo, so I won't spend a lot on that because we talked about it a lot. Number 2, this isn't getting talked about enough, I don't think, guys. The Detroit Lions fan base, the 12th man in Ford Field. I've been calling out that we need to change this and we need to make them the new 12th man in the NFL. The fan base in Ford Field was unbelievable last night. They said it could have been better than the last time the Rams came for the playoffs. It was packed. There were so many penalties. Matthew Stafford could not hear anything. Like it was an unbelievable atmosphere. I talked to some people who were there, and they said it was something that they'd never like. It just keeps getting better, and the fans keep showing out. And Tyler Chavez said the decibels were 120 plus. Like that's unbelievable. They deserve like the fans. For the fans, if you're in the chat and you were there, like you guys deserve so much credit for bringing the juice and doing what you guys do, and it just gets better and better. Like I wish that one game this year we could go to, but I know we were working. But like just that atmosphere, to get that feeling would just be unbelievable to see what it's like in that atmosphere in a big game. It is the new 12th man in the NFL now, and I think it needs to be stated. They need to get a flag or something up or a sign in Ford Field and hey, marker territory. Let them know who the new 12th man is. I don't care about Seattle. This is the new 12th man. Number 3 winner. I didn't just put Aiden Hutchinson, guys. I looked at some stats. A lot of people yesterday and this morning when we were doing the show, and I kept bringing up the Detroit Lions pass rush, were like, no, I don't know. I'm putting Aiden Hutchinson, Levi O, and Marcus Davenport in the Detroit Lions pass rush in it. I know they only had 2 sacks. This Detroit Lions pass rush, night and day different from last year. They looked way better. They were 3rd in the NFL, guys, and I want to make sure I get this stat right. I believe it was 3rd in the NFL with 27 pressures on Matthew Stafford yesterday. Think about 27. The next highest up was 29, and the Dallas Cowboys versus the fraud Cleveland Browns had like 40. They had an insane game with sacks and pressure. You're up there now in that elite category. That is an elite game. I know you didn't get home and get the sacks. That is elite. Like we were questioning a little bit throughout this offseason when PFF had the Detroit Lions pass rush ranked, I think 5th or 6th. We were like, well, that's crazy. How they showed why yesterday. Like 27 pressures is absolutely insane. And on top of that, not even just the pass rush, they were 7th again. They had the 7th best rush defense yesterday again, only holding them to like 87 yards or something like that, under 90 rushing yards total. Like that is unbelievable from the defense. I think Marcus Davenport had 6 or 7. I'm pretty sure actually Marcus Davenport had 6 or 7 pressures. Hutch had 11. Levi O had a couple. Levi O and Marcus Davenport had a half a sack each. Like I think this defensive line was getting to Matthew Stafford, and like I know the game plan was just short passes for Stafford. And for them to set them up and the way they'll D-line, I felt like the D-line not got set up, but when you have those short passes and that's what your defense is forcing, it's probably, in my mind, like just logically, it's harder for a D-line to get, to close in and get more sacks because Stafford is getting those short passes so quick. Like he's getting the ball off in 2 seconds. So I think as we get going, this D-line gets better. If they stay healthy, and like say you add James Houston in a couple of games when you feel like it's good, like he's good. Like this D-line is going to be very, very good. And it was one of the question marks I had on this team, and it ends up turning around and being a really good D-line. Losers. I'm going to do this, guys. Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay.
Love it.
Losers.
Both of them. Sean McVay, Jeff said, hey, coaching battle. Dan Campbell versus Sean McVay. If Sean McVay lose back-to-back big games versus Dan Campbell, that's a problem. Maybe we should look into it. And Dan Campbell, even as bad, even as bad as that game was for the Detroit Lions, Dan Campbell found a way to outcoach Sean McVay and win that football game. The better coach came out on top, in my opinion, at that point. And I think, like, hey, that was a coaching battle, Jeff. Like that it didn't come down to players. It came down to, hey, both teams are playing bad. Who's gonna call the right game? Dan Campbell did it, and Matthew Stafford has Matthew Stafford, by the way, played. How many times has he played the Lions? 3 times now, or did he play the first game? But did he play he did? All right, 1 and 2 versus the Lions. That man is tired of coming to Detroit. He is over. Mm-hmm. He never wants to probably step foot in Detroit again after these last 2 games. He was like, hey, I used to love this place, but hey, that was brutal, man. That was brutal. Number 2, I had the Detroit Lions secondary. Listen, this is an asterisk. This is an asterisk. This isn't me saying that they're bad. Not at all. I want the people to know that. This is just you gave up 100 and something yards to another wide receiver. We talked about it in the post-game show where I was like, hey, this can't be a thing. Like last year, every single wide receiver number 1, just 150, 200, 175, 180. Now you get Cooper Kupp out here. I would keep an eye on it. The talent's there. Can we reel it in? That's all. Can
I ask you something, Boone? And I just, again, I'm not taking a shot. I'm simply asking. So when you look at, They gave up 114 yards to Cooper Kupp. But when you look at the fact that Sean McVay was literally force-feeding the ball to Cooper Kupp because Kyron Williams couldn't get open, does that make it like when I see that and I see he's got 14 catches and he only has 114 total yards, when I see 14 catches, I'm like, Cooper Kupp easily could have 200 yards. Like that doesn't like put you
It
at
could have,
ease, or
but like
what's
it's
your
still you
thought on that?
still have to find a way to get it. You still have to find a way to slow him down. Like you have
Okay.
to. Like that. Like if it was something where he gets 100 yards and you win the game easily, like he was cutting you up, and you were about to lose the football game because of it. Like it wasn't like it was just like a fluke 100-something yards. Like you were losing the game because Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay was cutting you up. That was it. And I mean, he's elite.
Okay.
But again, like my point with this has nothing to do with any of that. It has to do with week after week last year, you were giving up big time plays. And yeah, you were winning some of those games. At some point, this has to get reeled in. And I know AG will reel it in. So I don't think it's that crazy. Number 3, too, the Detroit Lions stars. Everyone expected Goff said he had a tough game. Amon-Ra had a tough game, and Laporta obviously for the 40 yards, but he wasn't really shown there. So that's about it. I just think like everyone expected the stars to show up, and that's my list.
I like it. I like it. There you go. Winners and losers from the fellas from last night's game. We go through it. We tell you. We're trying to do this every single week. It's a lot of fun. And it takes us right into 9:50. So perfect timing. Just a little, I mean, we're at halftime right now. And I want to mention this before the 49ers Jets game. See, Christian McCaffrey, I knew I smelled something, fellas. What I say with the Rams and with Christian McCaffrey, and they're still a great team though, by the way, because they have a backup running back, pretty good.
Jordan Mason's going nuts right now, and I was not like Jordan Mason got snaps last year. He really didn't do much with it, but right now he's carrying them because Debo's only got a couple yards. Brandon Ayuk's been jack shit. Kittle's been limited. It's been the Jordan Mason show. Yeah.
But any mailbag, any questions, drop them in the chat. We'll answer them. And we'll do it. Hey, what a weekend. Well, hey.
Drop a like for the fellas, too. Victory Monday, 150 people in here. Everybody drop a like. Everybody, if you're not subscribed already, do that. We're definitely going to have some new merch coming out following this week, so make sure you check in the shop. Go to all the socials. Boone had his first Kool-Aid chug. Shit got all over me. He smashed the 2 beers, and it literally probably went 75% on Booner and 25% of me on his phone. Boone's back at it, though. What is it at now? Between that and the Jamo reaction, that Jamo reaction's over 1 million views already. Shout out Boone for that. But check out everything, plug everything, support the fellas.
Yep, yeah, it's good stuff, man. Good stuff. Real American Beer collabed with it too, so that's shout out to them. We were supplied with some beer this weekend, watching the game, locking in. We did like 4 shows, which you guys can go check out. I mean, we did the pregame watch party, post game reaction, this morning. Now we're live again. Did some stuff on Bleacher Report as well.
Been grinding.
Yeah, boys are content. Boys are locked in. I like it. Purple Prince mailbag, does playing a first string O-line this week give you any pause? It should not, because DJ Reader probably back, boys. So
yeah,
It does for me a little bit, just because they only got to Matthew Stafford 2 times. Now, granted, what Booner said, like Aiden Hutchinson could have had a couple more. Like he was getting held completely, and when he missed that sack later on Stafford. But I am kind of, I wouldn't say concerned, but I definitely am like, okay, this could be a different performance. Like all those pressures that we saw, I don't think we're going to see as many. And on the outside, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, those are 2 elite wide receivers as well. So they're going to be tested. I think this is where you really find out what that front seven's all about, because it's not like I have an asterisk next to their performance last night. But I think there's a couple NFL defensive lines that could have done the exact same thing that the Lions did last night.
That's fair. I don't know. Tampa's got, they have some rookies, right? They have Graham Barton, who's a rookie.
Graham Barton, Tristan Wirfs. I'm trying to think if they have, let me look at their centers real quick. But they know, like their offensive, that's a top 10 offensive line.
What about you, Boone?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna. You have to go out there and dominate at the end of the day. Like you can't just. You finally face you're facing the first good offensive line of the season, and you just go out there and lay an egg. I don't think they will either. Like they looked good this week. Like I don't know. Like if they went out there and had 4 sacks, and people were like, "Oh, they had a great week," people would still probably be like, "Oh, backup offensive line." Like, what point are you going to give them some credit?
That's how I am right now, though.
Yeah, but like they had the third most pressures in the NFL yesterday. Like they dominated, and they had a good. They were good in the run game, and they were good getting to Matthew Stafford and forcing him to make tough plays. Like so, it's like it's up against the backup, but like they couldn't control their up against a backup offensive line. Like they went out there and took care of business and had 20 something. Had the third most pressures in the entire NFL. Like they did their job. So I think this week they do the same thing. I bet you like last year a little bit they were getting to Baker, and remember Baker got hurt I think at one point last year. So I think on Sunday I think they'll get to Baker and you'll see Aiden Hutchinson wreaking havoc again.
What about this one, Mailbag? Do you guys change your prediction to have Jamo over 1,000 yards?
I'm still gonna, like I said, he could definitely reach 1,000 total scrimmage yards, and I still think that's in play. But I still think like what we were talking about earlier, he had 125 yards this week. He could very well go out there and get 60 the next week. So I think Jameson Williams, he could very well but I still think he's right on track to get around 800 receiving yards, 800. And if he gets 200 on the ground, I know that might seem like a lot, but just the player he is, I could see it happening.
Yeah, that's about where I am. I'm not gonna change. I know it's easy to overreaction Monday to be like, yeah, you know what, screw it, just do 1,000. But I still think Laporta is going to have those games where you're like, he's going to get 7 catches one game, or have 5 consistently, and I think Sam Laporta is going to be a big part of it. So no, I think he'll be around that number. I think he will be at, which is about 8-ish 100 yards around that. Could be 800, could be 790, 800, whatever in that range. I don't think he gets 1,000 though this year.
Really?
No, because I think Laporta will. Now, that's just because I'm higher on Laporta. I think Laporta's the best tight end in football, arguably. So, it's going to be hard for him. They're not going to have a game where Amon-Ra has 13 yards every week. You know what I mean? You're just not.
Yeah. I think he can get to 1,000.
Yeah.
If you have a couple games at 120, 130, and then you're sitting there with a couple 40, 50s, like you're going to get to 1,000. What is there, 16 games left? I'm just going to do the math here real quick. Minus 121 divided by 16. Like he only needs 55 more yards a game going forward to get it. Like I don't think that's that crazy for a guy like Jameson Williams. That's one big play a game.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's impossible. I know I see this comment here, and again, doing the same thing, 55 a week, he'll hit 1,000 if he starts every game. Math is not your strong suit, boys. No, it's not even math. I just look at this offense. If you think they'll have 3,000-yard receivers, then go ahead. That's your prerogative. I think they have 1,000-yard tight end currently. That's Sam Laporta. So I don't think they'll have 3,000-yard receivers in potentially 2,000-yard running backs.
Yeah, it's just too many yards.
I think they'll have Amon-Ra's going to do his thing with 1,400 yards, whatever. I think Laporta will be at that 900,000, maybe even over 1,000. We'll see. He could just have a big game next week, Laporta, and then Jamo will be right behind him. That's where I'm at. I'm not going to change my take after one game. That's what I had before the season, and that's where I'm at.
Yeah,
now.
I think I had like 875, I think, or something like that. I think that was mine.
Yeah. But
I
we'll
still
see.
feel good with that.
Yep, and then you have your Khalif Raymond with 500, and we did the whole thing last week where we had our yard, or not 2 weeks ago. And I
would change my Khalif Raymond one after last night. Maybe an overreaction, but he didn't even get a target, I don't think.
No, just in the run game and overtime.
Yeah, like he had a reverse. I don't even think he had an actual like pass target.
Yeah, and you look at Gibbs. I think Gibbs is going to have five-ish 100 yards. Could have 600. I mean, who knows what this dude does every week? So I don't know. Weapons are impressive. I mean, they just are. So anyway, that's where I'm at with it. I want to get to more questions because I saw another one in here. Let's see. J Hart Mailbag. How do we address these halftime woes that seem to creep over from last season?
I mean, I just think it comes down to sticking to the identity. Like, I think Ben Johnson's one of those guys where he's so smart that sometimes, like, especially with him not having as much experience against some of the defensive coordinators that he goes up against, where it kind of gets in his own way, where he wants to overcompensate and create an even bigger gap. But what makes the Lions so good is just relying on that run. If they would have done what they did on that overtime drive coming out of the second half, that's taking all of the momentum out of the Rams' sail and they're just going to keep doing that. But it's one of those things where I think he just tries to get too cute from time to time, and that's what kind of bites him in the ass. But I think Ben Johnson, he always finds a way to get out of it. Aaron Glenn, they complement each other very well. Like in the first half, Booner said they bend but don't break. They went down the field, the Rams, and Sean McVay tried to go for it on fourth down inside his own 20. He tried to be Dan Campbell, and they didn't let it happen. So I think they just got to figure it out, obviously, but I just think it comes down to Ben getting his own way sometimes.
Yeah, I do think there's like a part of the halftime situation to where like they are, and this happens in the NFL all the time, where like you're trying to figure out if you need to make adjustments, or you're sitting there and you're waiting to see what adjustments need to be made. And every coach is different with it. Like some coaches will go in and have a different game plan heading into the second half and be like, all right, we need to do this instead. So they don't know, or some coaches will sit there and have the same game plan, see what they adjust to, and then adjust to that. Like, I just think they need to figure that out. Like Dan talked about that at the end of the season last year in their end of season press conference. They had, I think Ben and Dan both got asked about the third quarters. I think it was actually Ben got asked about the third quarters. And that was something that he brought up, was like, hey, like we do make adjustments. We do. It's just hard. Like, you're trying to figure that out. And he did bring up a stat that they actually were good in third quarters. Like, he was like, for the people who say we aren't, he brought up a stat about how they actually are good. So I don't know. I think they're going to get it figured out. I don't think it's something crazy. It's going to be a problem all year long. I think it's just more so like yesterday was such a one-off that like the whole game was bad, like outside of overtime. So it's like you really can't say all the third quarter woes, because the whole game you just weren't like, there was no rhythm at all. So like to be in no rhythm and then to expect to all of a sudden in the third quarter be in a rhythm, probably not it.
Yeah.
Well, there you
On
go.
both sides of the ball.
Appreciate all you guys, man, today for tuning in. I mean, this big time. Again, the support over the weekend's been amazing. The show was a lot of fun. And let's do this again Let's do this again tomorrow. Let's get more lines, man. Play more. Let's
do it, Jeff.
Hey, let's do it, man. You know
The
what?
Jets are getting absolutely destroyed by the 49ers with no Christian McCaffrey right now.
Jordan Mason fucking dynasty game right now is what's happening.
Yeah, well,
legacy game.
Aaron Rodgers, his first game back. He doesn't look great. I mean, I'll tell you that. Doesn't look great. But regardless, we'll catch you guys tomorrow. Keep up your support. Get your merchandise. Officialctsports.com. Follow us on all social media platforms as above. Social media, that's where you can find us outside of YouTube. And if you want to watch more YouTube videos, hey, they're coming out. We posted 2 today, so go watch those. Watch our streams as well. We'll catch you guys tomorrow. Stay safe out there, and go Lions.
Peace. Booner Path.